my birthday, we get to finish this awful book. I'm just kidding. It wasn't all awful, but I gotta say, these ending chapters that, like, these last three chapters of any three chapters to end it on, like, these are the worst.
I know. When I was reading them, I felt like I was like, I see like the big point she was attempting to make here, but I feel like she didn't do enough to like make it really make sense. I get it, but like I don't buy it.
Yeah,
Which is
like,
similar to like Song of Achilles too, was like I got
yeah.
like what the ending was supposed to mean, but when I was reading it, I was just like, um
And it sucks because, like, I want to like Madeline Miller. So many people love her books and are like getting an intro to Greek mythology from these. It's just
mhm.
like there were so many parts where Circe was unlikable as a character, and then like the ending is so lackluster for what it set up. And I hate that the musical that must not be named actually did a better job with the character of Circe.
Yeah. Yeah, I don't know. It was weird. I think Madeline Miller books are one of those things that I think overall, I understand why people like them a lot
Hmm.
because they do make Greek mythology themes that people like to talk about, like more accessible for
Hmm.
people. And like, there's probably a lot of people who read this book who had never knew like a lot of like the stories of the different female characters in this book, and now they know those things and they think about them as opposed to like the men that usually get more attention in the stories and the myths and all that stuff, which is otherwise like that's a good thing. I understand why people like it in that way, but
Hmm.
I also feel like if you don't buy like the overall like story or something, like the big like point she's trying to make, then there's so many things about her books that are just like aggravating because it's so once you figure out what it is, it's so obvious what it is, especially
Hmm.
like looking back at it and you're like, but I don't like that. And
Yeah.
so it's one of those things that like we don't buy into it completely. Like the this one was still way better than like Song of Achilles or anything.
Hmm.
But it's still like I still didn't really buy into it in the way that she wants you to. And since we didn't, it makes all the other things that she did like just not hit the same way. I'm generally interested now to listen to like other podcasts that have read this book that like really liked it and
Hmm.
to like almost see like what they think this ending is saying because I guarantee you it's nothing that we're gonna say.
Yeah, yeah. And like, so the ending, we get a bunch of things that feel like they should be satisfying, but they're not in the way that it's told.
Hmm.
And so to start us off right away where we left off, she was thinking to herself, like, oh, I'm a sad empty nester here on the beach pretending I still have my crying baby. Which, like, again, as a mom, I can relate to it. I got pictures sent of my son because he's currently in Truckee and was like, oh my God, he looks like a full-on teenager. I can't handle this, right? So I get the feeling. But at the same time, like, her then going to Helios, this encounter did not give me what I needed it to give after all of these years of exile and finding out what her siblings went through. And like it just okay, so we start off chapter 5 with Helios just coming, even though it's like the first sentence is Helios was not a god to be summoned, but
And then
I
he
was
was
a
just like,
wayward child. Yeah.
what?
And then he comes, yeah. Um, and she's so I feel like our little nod to Madeline like being a classicist is color associations that we don't think of in modern times, where it's
Hmm.
like the purple of his clothes was as rich as deep pool blood. Purple is like not a color we
Royal.
associate with blood. So it's
Yeah,
just
no.
yeah, it's almost like how in the Odyssey it's described as like the wine dark sea, and it's like what does that mean? Because
Yeah.
I don't think of the sea like that. Yeah. But anyways, so Helios drops down, and Cersei's like, "Hey, Dad, can I be let out of exile?" And of course he's like, no, you're supposed to be being punished for eternity. There's no time off for good behavior. Sorry. And so Circe, she decides to threaten her dad. And what she threatens him with is like, you don't know this, but back when Prometheus was being punished in our halls, I went and I gave him water. I could tell Zeus that, and Zeus will get both of us, Daddy. Or I could tell him about all the conversations that I was listening to at your feet. Which, like, we didn't even, like, we heard in the beginning, Circe used to sit there at her father's footsteps, and, like, that she would listen to all of these Titan gods, like, they're talking, but we never heard
Mhm.
anything juicy about it. So for her to suddenly be like, "Oh, I have all the tea, by the way, from the Titans," it's just like, okay, what tea? Because how do we
Yeah.
not know this yet?
What could we? This was like one of those million things of like, this scene was definitely supposed to be like her finally like giving up on winning her family over and instead like just, doing the thing that like every scapegoat can actually do. Like we actually have a lot of power in
Hmm.
our family. We just like don't realize it because we want so badly for them to like us.
Yeah.
And so when we finally stop doing that and we're like, actually, I know about everybody's horrible secrets because you did them to me, so why don't I just like tell everybody?
Hmm.
And everything gets like flipped on their heads or whatever. That's what the scene is supposed to be, is like Circe getting her power back. And me, even me reading this scene, I was like, no,
Yeah.
like I don't agree. I don't think it's good enough, and it's also like what you said, like I don't understand why her doing that with Prometheus is such a big deal.
Hmm.
I don't understand why that would cause so many problems where he would like let her out of her exile. Like it just I generally don't understand why that is a big deal. Like why does it matter if she was nice to him for like 10 seconds before he's spending the rest of eternity having a bird like pluck out his liver out of his body every day?
Yeah.
Like why would it, she's not the one that's gonna, save him from that. And so like why does it matter that she was nice to him right before you damned him, like in between whipping him and like setting him to be tortured for life? Like why does it matter if she was nice to him for a couple seconds? Like that doesn't mean anything. And like it's also just like a thing of like he was talked about in the beginning as like this more like philosophical like moral difference between her and her family of like, they don't care about him, they don't care what's happening to him, and she does, and she wants to listen to him about like why did you turn yourself in and all this kind of stuff. And so to like suddenly bring that around is like this like chess piece thing of like, oh, Zeus will be mad or Zeus will think that you're trying to, I don't know, like start a war or something. And I'm like, because you were nice to him for 5 seconds, like why would that even matter? Like I generally like don't understand why that was such a big deal. Like when it was happening, I was just like, I don't understand why that would make any of these things happen. Like Zeus is, he's Zeus. He wants to fight everybody all the time, just like as a default. But
Hmm.
I still just didn't understand the motivations of how he would like jump to that. I guess I don't get it. I generally I don't get it. And so then her like being like, oh, I heard all of your guys' secrets, and I'm like with you, like when? Like what could they possibly be talking about? Like where that like Zeus already wouldn't know about? Um, like because the Titans can't do that much. Like because if they did, they would start another war, and they talk about incessantly in this entire book how they don't want that to happen. The
Hmm.
entire point of her being on this island is to delay that from happening. And so what could she possibly know that like somebody like Pasiphae or one of her other brothers who are horrible people wouldn't already know about?
Yeah.
Like
There's.
I'm just generally so confused by that. Like Madeline Miller is somebody that usually takes like a lot of time, but also she is one that like you can see very clearly when she just wants something to happen. Like I talked about this like when her lion died. I'm like, her lion died just so she could be raped. That's the only reason that happened, because otherwise doesn't make sense why this mystical, magical lion that's supposed to be like her magical protector suddenly is just dies. Like those sort of like I forget the word for them, but they usually don't just die. They're usually like, you
Oh,
know,
familiar.
yeah,
Yeah.
like a familiar doesn't die like a normal animal. And there's a couple other things like that, but that's the one that I remember the most in this book. And I was just like, yeah, I just don't understand why any of that matters. And like, I don't even know why he's talking to her. And like,
Yeah.
I thought that this was going to be, I don't know, something else. Like, her just, I know it's supposed to be her like finally like getting one up on her dad and having this like triumphant moment and all this stuff. And of course, when I was reading this, I wanted that to be like what it was. And I'm like, I guess that's kind of what this is, but
Hmm.
not really. Like I just, I was just so confused too of her being like, I want to have another baby to replace the child that just went off to war. And so, and then suddenly her dad shows up and she's like, actually, can you just let me off of this island? And doesn't mention anything about the baby or
Exactly.
anything like that. And it's just, and it's also one of those things of like the blackmail material that she has was always there.
Hmm.
And I'm like, so just like, you know, a quick question, you know, those like 16 years that your son was being held prisoner by you on this island, why didn't you ask him to do this then to help your son?
Seriously.
Why not have asked your dad to help protect your son so that he didn't have to be trapped on this island with only you for all of this time? Like maybe you could say she didn't want to do that because then she didn't want her family to know about him, but also like he's the son. Of course he's
Yeah.
going to know about you having a child. It's not like you can hide that kind of thing from them. And so it's not like they would be like ignorant of that happening. But it's
Hmm.
just one of those weird things of when you introduce something like that into a book like this, you just wonder why she never did this until now. And I understand, I understand that you're supposed to think that she is finally like ready to like stand on her own and is finally ready to like stand up to her family, and that's why she's never done it until this moment.
Hmm.
But I don't understand why she's doing it now.
Yeah, it's very much a why now moment because yeah, all of the sting we could have got. So the line that I ended up underlining because I'm like I'm sure every scapegoat would love to say this to their dad is like he's telling her not to like spill all of her dirt and he says you would start a war and she says I hope so for I will see you torn down father before I will be jailed for your convenience any longer. And that should be a line where you're like yes girly let's get him, but I was just confused. I was like how did we get here?
Yeah, I was sad just because I didn't feel like the thing about these ending chapters, I'll say to like explain, I guess overall how I felt is that I just felt like there's supposed to be these moments throughout the book of her like slowly putting things together, and then
Hmm.
maybe her son leaving as like the catalyst for her to put all these things together that she's learned about how the world works and what women go through and what men do to women and the patriarchy and misogyny and all that stuff, where she finally is just like, I don't care about anything anymore because I don't need to protect my son. He's out there in the world. He doesn't need me anymore in that way. So now I can just like tell my dad to go fuck himself. But there wasn't any of those things like leading up to this moment. Like right before this happens is when she's making everybody walk around on eggshells before they left because
Hmm.
she's being so over dramatic and just like so selfish that she's making them leave and like Athena come all about her and what this means for her. And so
Hmm.
it's like she was just like last chapter was when she was like still distrusting Penelope, still talking about how her sister must be happy somewhere, even though she knows for sure that she's not. And just like making everyone feel uncomfortable because she's like yelling at everybody and they're having to like walk around her feelings, which is not how any of this is supposed to go. And so I was like, she hasn't done any of like the steps that you do when you actually figure this stuff out. And so for her to go from like 0 to like 10,000, I was like, when the fuck did this happen?
Yeah, so we get this scene of her threatening her dad of like, I'm gonna tear down everything, I'm gonna tell Zeus everything, and it's gonna ruin you. Or you talk to him and have him let me off this island. And so Helios gives in, of course, because like what else are you gonna do at that point?
Hmm.
And then she goes to Penelope and it's like, do you want to go back to Sparta, girly? Because I'm leaving. Are you gonna stay or are you leaving too? And Penelope decides that she's gonna stay. Telemachus at this moment is off doing his own thing. When she eventually finds him, he's like, "Oh no, I'm going with you," and it's like this all feels out of nowhere. Still,
Yeah.
like this whole chapter.
Even like Telemachus being like, I'm mad at you. And it's like, and she's like, why? And I'm like, yeah, why?
Yeah. Yeah, so okay, but so when she finally gets a hold of Telemachus, he tells her, "I've been mad at you," and it's because he was mad that she thought that he would take Athena's offer. We
Hmm.
got no indication from Telemachus or Circe that anyone thought that was off the table. Like Circe was baffled the entire time. Telemachus is like, "No, I don't want to become king of some foreign land. Like, sorry." And like I don't know because all of the conversation between him and Penelope, like we didn't get any of that, which like of course, it makes sense Cersei wouldn't be there. But even still, there was just no indication that Telemachus wouldn't take it. So,
Yeah, and
yeah.
it's also like this conversation is literally him having like a legitimate reason to be upset with her. Like, why did you think after all that talk we had about my dad and how I feel about his life and all the mistakes he made, why would you still think, despite all of that, that I would want to go off with Athena and want to like just do exactly what my dad did after I just spent like the last like hour telling you how much I don't want to be like him? And she was just like, oh, I just didn't think about that. And it was just like, anyway, can I leave with you? And it's like, why? Why do you want to leave with somebody who doesn't fundamentally understand you? And also, like, am I not supposed to notice how this is fucking creepy?
It's
This is
weird.
this is really
Yeah.
really weird. That is her son. That's her. I don't know what they would be like. That's like her stepson. That's
Yeah.
basically like her stepson. That's her son's brother. And the entire, I was just like, this isn't incest, but it feels like it is. And because of that, I'm like, I either way, I'm like, this doesn't feel right. Like their relationship just doesn't. It feels really weird. That
Hmm.
like it literally feels like he just wanted to go with her because she was nice to him. Um,
Yeah.
and it just doesn't feel like I don't know why he wants to go with her, I guess. I don't understand what about her he's interested in because she's a fucking bitch to him most of the time. She's constantly like accusing him of wanting to kill her son or do all these nefarious things or she reminds him how everybody hero worships his father and always thinks of him as less than to the point of even this conversation of her not even considering that he wouldn't want to go when it's so obvious to him. It's just like I don't know why he would even want to be around her like this. She's not exactly been nice to any of them the whole time they've been on this island. And then on top of it, I'm like, this is really freaking weird. He's like a baby compared to you, and also he's not that much older than your son.
Yeah,
So this
it
is
hits in
really
a way
weird.
it hits in a way that vampire fiction doesn't when we talk about these outrageous age gaps because at
Yeah.
least in the vampire fiction, there's no comparison. We don't really ever get the comparison of like, oh, they watched somebody grow up from this age to this age, but we have the living comparison of Telegonus, her son, not being like yes, older than Telemachus, but like by probably 10 to 13 years at most.
Yeah.
So the comparison is wild. It's wild that she has that she's literally seen multiple generations of people die at this point that are related to this person. And
Yeah.
yeah, so that got me, but it's just like why does it matter to Telemachus that Circe doesn't understand this about him? Like, I can see how Madeline was building up to Telemachus would never go with Athena after what his dad went through,
Hmm.
but we don't see how Circe would know that yet. Because, like, yes, they had conversations about the false hero worship of his dad, but he's not really talked about how he feels about the gods with her in that way.
Yeah.
Like, and like it takes him telling her, "Oh yeah, I kept it a secret that I had seen Athena a bunch of times because I'm ashamed of it." Like, how would we have known that? Like you never said it, bro.
Yeah, and it's also just a thing of like, why does he care so much? Like,
Yeah.
what she specifically thinks. This whole thing with like them, it feels like to me, as like my asexual self, feels like the best example I can give of like people are fucking obsessed with romance to the point that you ruin your own story. Because like, why did either one of these people have to end in like a romantic heterosexual like straight ass relationship? Like, why was that necessary? Like, why couldn't she have gone off with Penelope? Like, that would
Yeah.
actually make more sense. Like, that would actually make way more sense.
She's been craving a sister to do witchcraft with forever. And then
Yeah.
we get this little like, hey, Penelope's super interested in witchcraft, and then she leaves. She
Anyway,
leaves.
bye.
Yes.
And it's just really weird. Like, why does the two of them? Why is that like her such a big part of the ending of her story? Is her like romancing somebody who's only 10 years older than her son, who I'm pretty sure she only is attracted to because he's the son of Odysseus, even though he hates Odysseus. And
Yeah.
so it's just like, I don't know why any of this, it felt like she felt like she had to end up with somebody in some way. And I keep remembering that like review that I read where the person who read this book was so upset by it that she like got rid of it, like was a teenage, she was like 16 when she read this book, which like this would be like too much for a teenager, especially because she didn't know all of the like the trigger warnings and stuff about this book like going into it. But despite that, she read it and then she got rid of the book. She didn't even want it in her house because it
Mhm.
made her so upset. And one of the things she said in her review was just like, I don't understand like the point of all this stuff in the way that like all of her relationships were like surface level. She's super fixated on the one with like her and Hermes, which I understand now after reading it, but she said like none of them were like, the ones that lasted the longest were the most surface level ones, and the ones that were the shortest were the ones that like she seemed like she cared more about, like Daedalus and stuff. And
Yeah.
she was just like, I don't understand why, like, what the point of all of these sort of interactions were and what we were supposed to think. And she was just like sad at the end of it because she felt like she went through all of this stuff and never had any real relationship or like real like love like that in her life, and was just like, why did I read this? Like,
Yeah.
she was like, that's how she felt. And I was like, yeah, that's, I don't know why like I'm supposed to be so happy about her and like Telemachus ending up together. It just feels really gross and weird. And I generally
Yeah.
don't know why it's even happening. Like, I never thought that she would end with a person anyway.
Mhm.
And like that, like I don't know, I just didn't think about her story like that, which, like, granted, I probably wouldn't. But I also didn't think Telemachus necessarily would end necessarily in that sort of way. I thought
Yeah.
like their story was going to be about like, I thought their whole parallel story was going to be about them figuring out how to like, find their own identity outside of their family when their family is the thing that people usually think of.
Mhm.
That's what I thought it was. Not that they were going to like do that by having sex a bunch of times.
Yeah, so what she did was she took the fact that the telegony exists, that this supposed second epic that takes place after the Odyssey with Telegonus talking about what happened to Odysseus afterwards is a thing. And then she's like, okay, that's our romance. And it doesn't pay off. It doesn't pay off.
Mm-mm.
It barely paid off in myth. It's part of the reason why nobody talks about, oh yeah, Odysseus had a baby with Circe and then that baby killed Odysseus. And then his son and his wife went back to Aiea, and they married off each other, mother and son switched off. It's weird. It's weird. It's weird even in mythology with like very little explanation. So you put explanation to it, apparently it's still weird.
It's
I
still
mean,
weird.
I'm just thankful that Telegonus didn't end up with Penelope in this one, because what would that even look like?
Yeah. And also, I don't know if this, I can't remember if Madeline Miller did things like this in The Song of Achilles, but I'm pretty sure she did something similar to it. But the whole thing of, like, after this conversation where they go back and talk to Penelope, and it gives the impression that basically the myth or whatever, like the idea of who people think Circe is actually Penelope, and that
Kind of.
Penelope is like pretending to be Circe all those years. So like her myth of her being like this mystical witch that helps people or whatever is actually Penelope. And while like Circe gets to just like run free and go on like fun little adventures with her son, while she like stays in this island and just does the stuff that people thought that Circe would be doing or should be doing or
Yeah.
is doing. It's like a weird mythology thing. It makes me wonder like what classics people think of that, of like her basically like and inventing the idea of like Circe actually not doing that stuff and having somebody else like basically sit in for her and do it for her so she
Yeah.
can go off and like have adventures, I guess.
Well, okay, so what I would say is she had all of the big heroes who visit Circe already visit Circe in this book at this point. So like it's kind of when she does the thing. So what happens, what Shannon's talking about is that Circe, when she's deciding I'm gonna finally leave Aiea, she shows Penelope all the herbs she can, like literally everything in her store that doesn't need spoken magic, and is like, here's all of my herbs. You get to now be the Witch of Aiea. And like is convinced she'll become a full-fledged witch in the long run.
Mm-hmm.
But this switching of places, it's so, I don't know, there's no way to really make sense of it, because again, like I said, all of the Circe myths that are big have taken place already. She had Jason come, she had Odysseus come, she had Aeneas pass by Circe. So what is there really here that's left for Penelope to have on Aiea? Like
Mm-hmm.
really, other than just existing as the Witch of Aiea, which means absolutely nothing when your island looks inhospitable and no one's gonna land there anyways. Which
Mm-hmm.
we find out that spell, for whatever reason, is the one that holds without Circe, whereas apparently she's only been renewing the spell that keeps Athena away for every 3 months, even though those two spells were originally talked in a very linked way. Like I thought it was all one spell that did
Mm-hmm.
controlled all of that, but no. Apparently it was multiple spells. Yeah.
I don't know.
It's such a weird way to end it. And so part of the reason why I think Shannon and I are jumping around a little bit more than we did, I was even having trouble like paying attention, staying focused on these last chapters, because all of these big payoffs just don't happen the way they should.
Yeah.
So, like Circe and Telemachus leave, and then what they go to do, which again, we had very little lead up for this, is Circe decides I'm going to take care of our Scylla problem. Because now that I'm not on the island, that is my biggest priority, which I will say does make sense for the Circe we've come to know, but it actually working is what didn't make sense to me. I feel like it's a mistake she should have had to keep living with. In a
Mm-hmm.
way, like I know that that keeps Scylla a monster and theoretically keeps Scylla still eating sailors and stuff, but just her being able to undo the Scylla part is unsatisfying for multiple reasons. So her and Telemachus take off sailing, and it turns out Circe had somehow milked the tail, the stingray tail, so that it leaches out poison. She put that in a bowl. She turned these 12 big fish into, was it goats or sheep? I always forget the two. Anyways, she turns them into sheep, and so that way when her and Telemachus pass by Scylla, Scylla grabs the sheep, Um, she all in all changes 12, and so the second round of her grabbing these sheep, Scylla grabs one that has the poison attached to it.
Mm-hmm.
And we don't know that this spell is going to work right away because Circe says she's listening for the sound of breaking pottery, knowing she stopped a, like a big mixing bowl type thing, and that's what it ate. Um, and then she has to step in front of Telemachus at one point with the spear, with the tail still on it. Like, then all of a sudden Scylla just starts ripping off her own legs and
Yeah.
turns into stone. Like, it was, I had to read it over multiple parts, and I'm still not quite sure if it was she got. I don't think she got speared at all, so it had to have been the poison she drank. But how
Yeah.
did that turn her to stone?
The only thing I could come up with was that like why she started tearing her legs off was that like that whatever the poison was hurt so bad that
Yeah,
she just was trying to get to stop. But I also went back and was like, why is she now stone?
yeah.
I was confused by that. I was like, Medusa? What? Like, why is something stone? That's like the only thing I can remember in mythology, really, that where something like turns into stone.
Yeah.
And so I was like, did I miss something? Are there like gorgons or something around? Is like some no? And I was like,
Yeah.
okay. Like, and
Apparently, Trigon poison, which we've been told for immortals, which you would think Scylla is probably technically partially immortal here, that it
mhm,
causes them really bad pain. And,
yeah,
like, yes, we get that with her ripping them off. It's just, how did she turn to stone? That's the part where it's like, this doesn't make sense for the magic we're being told is happening here.
yeah. It's also just overall like even before they like actually got. I think this conversation happens before they actually get to Scylla, where her and Telemachus are talking about like like mistakes or whatever they've made, and I forget what his is. It's
It's the killing of the servant women.
oh yeah.
Yeah, he
Uh,
didn't like that his dad made him do that, which I do like that choice narratively. Um, it's just, yeah, it's so weird because actually that conversation does happen afterwards, but it was that she finally is telling him about her mistakes and he wants to willingly listen. That's kind of the big deal between the two of them.
I guess I'll say that I didn't like it didn't feel like right for how I felt like they were what she was doing with the book so far
Hmm.
for her way to fix quote unquote the idea that she could fix the whole thing with like Scylla at all, and then the fact that when she did fix it it was killing her.
Yeah.
And I was just like, why is that the way to fix it, is to like kill the person that you turned into a monster? Like you should have to deal with them being alive. Like why not use your magic to make their life easier? Like instead of her being out on this rock somewhere, why not like put her somewhere else or make her not want to eat people anymore and have her like instead eat animals and like have her be around like animals that it doesn't matter if all of her heads eat all of these like animals or whatever because it's more like a natural thing or just anything but like turning her into stone um just because you feel bad because you made her like that like but why is killing her fixing anything about that situation?
Yeah.
Why? Because she can't hurt more innocent people.
And that is what it is. And it's not the way we're thinking about Scylla after the way she set up Scylla using Ovid's myth about Scylla. Because
Mm-hmm.
um I'm pretty sure the Scylla, like, coming from, like a jealousy thing with Glaucus, it was earlier than Ovid as well. I'm not going to be one of those people of like, oh, Ovid made this one up, right? But it is one of those lesser known ones to the point where you could have not included this, and like nobody would have blinked an eye in the fact,
Mm-hmm.
like, if you just never mentioned Scylla at all. But you did mention her, and you not only mentioned her, but you took away, like, possibly um Circe being enchanted by Aphrodite or Cupid in this case, And, so she was 100% doing the Scylla thing of her own volition, was actually in love with Glaucus when it happened. And you do this horrible thing of now I'm just going to kill off the monster because, as Circe says it, no more souls would walk to the underworld written with my name. Like, that's all she can think about when it comes to Scylla. Not, I turned to this person who didn't deserve it and they don't deserve to die a monster. Or,
Yeah, it's
yeah,
not about them at all. It's just about like I feel guilty
yeah,
because this thing is like hurting people, and it's just so the opposite of the thing that is like confusing about it. Like I think it was last week where you said like I don't think Madeline Miller understands like dysfunctional families,
hmm,
and I really don't think she does, because this is like the opposite of how you feel. Like when you actually go through this stuff, you see the people that you like hurt or may have hurt you as way more human as more time goes on. Like you understand how complex they are the more time passes, and the more you like think about it or just like look at things differently now that like some of like the trauma stuff has like backed off a little bit, and you can like actually look at it for what it was instead of how you felt when you were going through it at the time. And
hmm,
so it's just one of those things of you don't, I could never like imagine doing something like that to like somebody that I hurt in the past, especially just because I felt bad because of what I did to them. Like I would want to make things better with them, or I would want to like understand them more or like do something to make their life better.
yeah,
Making their life better isn't them dying. Um it's definitely not about Scylla at all. And so it just felt like the opposite of what most people actually do
hmm,
in those sort of situations, that it was just so confusing. And I was just like, I don't understand where this motivation is coming from of like why she suddenly wants to confront Scylla when like literally, not even exaggerating, the last chapter she didn't even want to like bring up her name.
yeah,
And so she went from like not even wanting to bring up her name until to Leganis not even knowing who she was besides like hearing about her, and her being upset that he even knew that a sea monster existed, to her suddenly wanting to confront him head on, her head on, and turn her into like a gigantic statue after making her go through mind-numbing pain. Like
hmm,
her, like why is the thing of how to handle Scylla after you turned her into this because you were being just mean and misogynistic, is to force her to go through the worst pain you can possibly ever imagine and then get turned into stone. Like she
right.
did not deserve that. She didn't do anything.
Yeah, and also it's treated as not a very big deal, but she like low key has Circe slay Charybdis as well while she's at it. And it's just like not really given any sort of like grandeur that it should for being as big as it is, because she just took out these two huge obstacles in the
Yeah.
sea. But like, we're focusing so hard on Scylla that the fact that she dropped Trigon's tail and then all of a sudden Charybdis isn't making any sort of noise anymore. Like, no big deal. Not at all. We're just not gonna talk about this anymore.
Yeah. I didn't even realize that like Charybdis was just like done now too, because I was just like, what the fuck?
Yeah,
Like,
it's
if it was
weird.
this easy to fix this, why didn't anybody ever do anything before this moment? It's
Yeah.
just, I don't know. It was all so weird. I didn't understand, like, I don't understand why this, these ending chapters are so weird because these big things keep happening where I'm like, I feel like I should be like, going with this. I should be excited about this, or I at least should feel like this sort of like confrontation was like supposed to happen at the end of this book. And I was just like, what? Like I did not even consider that she would want to like do something like this with Scylla and Charybdis and any of that. I just didn't, I wasn't even thinking, I didn't have like a clear idea what I thought would happen at the end. But I didn't think it was going to be something like that. I'll say that for
I
sure.
almost wanted, like, when I noticed that she was facing Scylla, I almost wanted her to get eaten. I'm not even gonna lie. I was
Yeah.
almost like, okay, the most poetic thing that she could do here is die.
Yeah. And then Telemachus to be like, there was like one line in
Yeah.
there about how like, oh, I hope I don't die because that would really traumatize Telemachus. And I'm like, you think that you
Yeah.
like brought him out here only for him to stand there and watch you get eaten and then either be stuck there by himself with your blood all over the place, or he would also be eaten. What a great way to live his life.
Oh my gosh. Yeah. So, as they're on the ship now, they start talking about like some of Circe's stories, and this is the part you were bringing up earlier. So Circe says Scylla was not born a monster. I made her, and he asks how did it happen. And so she tells him the story, and he says her name Scylla. It means the render. Perhaps it was always her destiny to be a monster, and you were the only the instrument. And she
Yeah,
says to him,
no.
"Do you use the same excuse for the maids you hanged?" And he just immediately shuts up. Which, like, he kind of deserved that one, I will say. But like, it it's such a weird conversation for them to have when this is leading into romance, and it's like we fundamentally do not understand each other. So let's go and spend 3 days having a little affair on a beach together.
Yeah, like why not? I guess this that whole like I didn't even got into the part of the conversation that I was talking about, but already it's just like weird for him to be like, "Oh, maybe she was always supposed to be a monster and you just helped her." And it's like, "No, that's not what people do." Um that's one of those things that like greatly annoys me how people act like abusive people are just like meant to be that way. Like someone recently in a video was like, "Oh, people are murderers because they just are one." And I'm like, "No, it's because they decide to kill someone." Like nobody is like predestined to do anything evil. People just decide to because they think whatever they get out of it is more important than whatever they're about to do to somebody. Like people can decide not to do bad things.
Yeah, being
And
a
so
troubled individual doesn't mean you get to escape the culpability of I still chose to do certain things.
yeah, and it just feels like it doesn't feel nice or fair or whatever for her to bring up Telemachus having to kill the maids that um that Odysseus made him kill because it wasn't his actual choice.
Hmm.
You're the one who chose to do that to Scylla. Nobody made you do that. People actually told you not to.
Yeah.
Multiple people even. Multiple people multiple times
Yeah, like
told you not to.
Telemachus just saw his dad slaughter a room full of people. Do you think that that is the moment where he's going to be like, "No, Dad, I'm not going to take care
Yeah,
of
like,
these
yes,
things for
abusive
you"?
dad, I'm gonna stand up to you after you
Like,
just did that.
he even told her he was thinking that he would somehow lessen the punishment for them by doing it himself rather
Yeah.
than letting Odysseus do whatever he was
Yeah,
gonna
like,
do.
he was not the one who was deciding to do this. He was trying to do it in a way where it would not hurt as bad, basically. Because it was like, these women are going to die. My dad's gonna kill them no matter what happens here. And so I can at least try to do it where it's not as bad as it possibly could be. That he is not the one.
Yeah.
He is not the one that made that decision. And it is really fucking shitty to be like, "Oh, what about those people you killed?" It's like, he didn't kill them. His dad killed them. His dad made him be the one to do it, so he was a part of all of it. Like, but like his dad is the one that did it. That was Odysseus who made him do that. Odysseus is the one that was going to do it no matter what. And so like that wasn't his choice. He wasn't the one like going around killing everybody while naked like Odysseus does in the Odyssey. Like he's
Yeah.
that wasn't him. He was the one just like seeing this happen and like going with what his dad wanted. And so I was like, it's not even his decision. They're not the same.
Yeah.
It's not the same situation for like a child to have to do something because their parent is telling them to. Like they don't have the same amount of like power or like just freedom to say no. Like what, he couldn't say no. He wouldn't want to say no to his dad. He just got home after being gone for all of this time. But he especially wouldn't want to say no to his dad after all of that happened. Like, I don't even think he could have said no.
Yeah.
And so it's like he didn't have like a choice in that matter. And so you did. Like, you had all these times where you could have decided not to turn her into a fucking monster. Like, a million different times you could have not done it, and you did it anyway. And so it's like, that's not the same. It's not the same, and it doesn't feel fair for her to like throw that back in his face
Yeah,
when
and this conversation, the way it ends, so Madeline's trying to do something here with these two comparisons that doesn't work because they're not good comparisons, is what we're getting to. But what she tries to do is, so, when she tells him, like, what about those maids you hanged? She says, "It is now how you know you are different from your father." And he says, "Yes. It's the same for me. Do not try to take my regret from me." Meaning that
I
both
hate
of them
that.
having these regrets are why they are a good match.
I hate that. Like,
Yeah.
that is a part that I hated. I was like, what are you talking about? That the only way you can tell that you're different from your abusive dads is because you feel bad about the things that you've done to other people. Like, literally every single facet of who you are as a person proves that you're different from your dad. Like, you you're just a person that doesn't want to hurt everybody. Like, that makes you different from your dad. But it was just, I especially hated that, of the idea that, like, oh, because I feel really guilty and like have all this like shame about something that I did. And shame is the most destructive emotion of all time. Like, I laugh about this story because I think it's funny. That part of like having PTSD is that you don't understand like what emotions are necessarily. Like, you don't understand what emotion you're feeling. You have to like sit there and like think about it. And I still will sit there and be like, what am I feeling right now? And like, why am I feeling it? But when I went to like my treatment program in 2019, they had one of those big like feeling wheel things with that, like, some of them were like stuffed animals, and they have like every single feeling on there. And they had an entire class when we were there explaining different emotions and feelings and like what they actually meant. And I remember that when they went to explain shame, I was like, I don't think I ever feel shame. And then it was my therapist doing the class, and I was like, oh, I feel shame every single second of every single day. And they were talking about how like shame is like the most destructive emotion. Like, one of the things on social media lately is like people need to feel more shame. And I'm like, no, 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 no. It's the other way around. People feel so much shame that they do things to like cause rage to come at them, as a way to like, they already feel shame, and so they're like, well, I'm just gonna rage bait people to like at least have something to like have fun with this feeling I'm already having. They already have the shame. The shame is why they do these things. We don't need more, we need a lot less. There's way too
Yeah.
much. Like, almost every other video, especially since January, I see on social media anywhere, is somebody trying to shame somebody else for something that they've said or done. And I'm just like, oh my god, this is like out of control with how much this is happening. Jesus Christ. But either way, like, shame is a very harmful emotion. It's not helpful. It doesn't make you feel good. It doesn't like make you want to change anything. It makes you just feel really horrible about yourself in a really destructive sort of way, and just causes you to think the worst things about yourself over and over again. It makes you literally just sit there and be frozen and not do anything, because you feel like nothing you could possibly do is worth it because of how much shame you feel about the things that you've done. It makes you want to just go like hide in a corner and hide from everybody because you feel like you don't deserve anything. And so the idea that these two characters would want to hang on to that feeling, and that it is being told to you as like a positive thing, that like them continuing to feel shame about these mistakes when Telemachus was not his fault at all. Like, why do you feel shame about this? That is your dad. You should feel nothing about that, besides the fact that maybe feel bad that you happen to be related to him, but that's a whole different thing. That is not his fault at all. But the end part of this is like them telling, like, she's trying to tell you like, oh, it's a good thing to like feel bad about these things you've done to people in the past. And I don't, and like, don't like, you know, move on or like feel differently about it. Like, yes, don't like try to downplay it the way that Telemachus was by being like, oh, maybe she was always supposed to be bad the whole time, and so it
Yeah.
wasn't your fault for doing it. It's more of a thing of like looking at it and feeling more like morally neutral about the things that you did. Like, yeah, there are some things that you feel bad about. There are things that I feel bad about that I did to people when I was like up until a couple years ago. But I also look at the person that was doing those things in a way more empathetic way, like at my own self, because I now have a lot more empathy for that self now that I remember more about the things that I was thinking and feeling at the time. And instead of it just being like this thing of like, God, I'm a horrible person that doesn't deserve anybody, no wonder why I'm going to spend the rest of my life alone. It's more of like a thing of I feel really bad for that version of me that she didn't have anything else or anyone else that she could do, and this was like the best that she could do. And so
Yeah.
like when I think about going back and talking to the people that I interacted in like all those years, even up to just a couple years ago, I want to talk to them to be like, I understand like why I acted that way. And I don't know if this helps you understand where I was coming from, but this is why I was doing those things. And I'm sorry that, I didn't treat you that great. And it had nothing to do with you, but this is why, at least now I have an explanation.
Hmm.
Not to like make myself feel better in a way, but just to be like, yeah, I now understand why I was acting like that when for so long I had no idea. And that's like more where it comes from of just like being able to talk to somebody honestly about what I was doing without feeling like I need to like give myself excuses or like explain myself away. Just be like, yeah, I was a big mess and I didn't know
Yeah.
what I was doing. I shouldn't have talked to you that way and I'm sorry that I did. I'm not like that anymore, and but, you know,
Yeah.
I'm glad that I'm glad that you still want to if they want to talk to me still. I understand why they wouldn't. Like there are people that I've like, reached out to and they've never said anything back to me.
Hmm.
And I fully understand why they don't. And it doesn't make me feel like a horrible person when they don't, cuz I understand there are people like that I don't want to talk to either because I
Hmm.
just don't want to bring up all of that stuff. And it doesn't feel I don't feel like this horrible shameful feeling after those things happen anymore. But like to have this whole discussion where they're like, actually, yeah, it's really good that we blame ourselves for these things and never move on from that feeling of like shame. And I'm like, oh, no, that's the opposite of what you should do, and especially for Telemachus. Like, I don't understand why this book is so fucking obsessed with Odysseus. Like, I will never
Yeah.
get over this. That Odysseus literally took over this entire book.
The
And
second half of it, yeah.
I don't under it's from chapter 15 all the way to the end. It's all about him somehow. And I'm like, why the fuck is this book about Odysseus more than it's about Circe? I just that will always be so confusing to me, but especially this part, it just feels so off
Hmm.
that she's saying that her killing Scylla and turning her into a monster in the first place, and also Glaucus into like a god in the first place, because he didn't exactly ask for that either. Um, who knows if he likes still being a fish all the time, but
Yeah.
like she did that on her own, and they gave away all of the things that, like you said, gave her like more excuse where it wasn't just purely just her. In this version it was purely just her.
Yep.
Telemachus was like forced to do that, and so it just doesn't feel right. And especially coming from just like some like an actual cycle breaker situation, I'm like, this is the opposite of what you should be doing.
Yeah. So the thing that she's missing that is like it's the flip side of what she's getting at here is that both of them feel empathy where their family didn't. Odysseus is Mr. I'm going to get shit done. I don't care who it hurts.
Hmm.
And Telemachus isn't. Circe has always felt immense empathy for people that her family does not. That could have been the thing that joins them. That could have been their similarity that they hang on to. But instead it's, oh, I have these shameful regrets. And that made more sense for Daedalus than it did with Telemachus, because as
Hmm.
we've been saying, Telemachus's shame isn't his own, it's that he carried out his father's actions.
Yeah.
Whereas Daedalus at least had a little bit more personal agency with, I built that device that enabled Pasiphae to get pregnant with the Minotaur.
Hmm.
Um, that's a lot more personal responsibility for creating a monster. Um,
It's also really weird that
yeah,
they talk about them having empathy in a way of like, people in our family don't care about these things, and that's what makes us hashtag special and different. But they don't have any, like, none of that empathy. I don't I don't hold like Telemachus against this because Odysseus literally just died. Like learning this kind of stuff takes like a long time. He's like years away from doing that kind of thing. But
yeah,
Circe's not. And so like why don't you have more empathy for your family?
yeah,
That is something that happens. That's like a key part of this stuff is you have, if you understand yourself and the things that you were feeling and how complicated your feelings and emotions were when you did things that hurt people, you just automatically start thinking about the people around you that hurt you, whether it's your family or friends or whoever, in the same sort of way. Because it's like, well, if that's true about me, that's true about everybody. And you don't do that in a way of like, oh, I'm going to forgive them or whatever. It's not about that. It's just purely just like thinking about them as people instead of seeing them as these like black and white sort of figures or whatever. You can see them as more like a full person. And so it's like, so why is it that she could figure this out about herself, but she never thought about her dad that way, or like her sister that way, or literally anyone else ever that who's a god that way? And like the obvious answer is because the end of this stupid book is her deciding to try to turn into a human and completely get rid of the fact that she's a god and doing this whole storyline like that. And so that's why she never does that, because they're trying to go so hard on the idea that the gods are like actually less than, and that where she doesn't want to be them to be one anymore. But it's like, oh my god, you don't have to do that in order to like figure that out. And it's just like a frustrating thing of, I don't know why she doesn't ever figure. I was like waiting this whole book for her to at least have like some empathy for her sister, especially after she's like, oh, I get raped all the time,
yeah.
by like my brother and other people, and our super powerful dad just tells me to take it. And that's not even like an exaggeration. That's basically what she says in that scene. And so it's like, and like my husband keeps trying to rape these other women and he's mad at me because I don't let him. Like that's the thing he's the most angry about, is that he can't actually follow through with the rape. Instead he just
No,
gets
he
like tempted.
does.
He
He
gets
does.
tempted with it and then he kills them. And so
No, that's the thing though. It's because, like, I hate to be specific with this, but he
yeah.
ejaculates like the monster. So he goes through with it anyway. He just can't get them pregnant.
No,
Um,
he doesn't get to like, I guess, enjoy it is like the
yeah.
thing I was thinking, in the way that like
Oh my
people
gosh,
who do
yeah.
those things do get some weird enjoyment out of it. They do. And
Yeah.
but it's like that kind of thing isn't happening for him, and that's why he's so mad at her, is because he doesn't get to enjoy what's happening. And he just keeps doing anyway. It's like, why, how do you hear all that stuff happening to your sister and then you yourself are raped and
Hmm.
you never apply how you felt to her? Like,
Yeah.
imagine if you went through that, Circe, and it was your brother that was doing it, who lived in the same house as you for all those years. Or the people who lived in the same, like, castle or whatever, kingdom, giant place that they lived in the beginning part when she was with her family. Those people are all around. And so the people that were doing that stuff to Pasiphae were always around. And so, like, you think it was bad enough when these, like, strangers show up and do it to you that you then turn into pigs. Like, imagine how bad it is when you have to see them all the time. It sucks.
Yeah.
It really, really sucks. It's horrible. It's the worst thing ever. And, like, I don't even know how to explain that to people. Like, people, like, every family member has said, like, I don't know how you dealt with that for all of those years. And I just tell them, like, I don't know. Like, I just did, because what other option did I have? There
Yeah.
was no other option. I just had to figure out how. But like that is the worst. And you know that that's happening to your sister, and you're just like, "Oh, she's just back in at like the castle with dad having a nice time getting raped again." And it's just like, why don't you have any empathy for anyone else but you and like the humans that you decide to like imprint on?
Apparently, yeah. So, her and Telemachus have this 3-day little expedition on a beach where she gets to pretend that she's, his wife, for a second, it feels like, because they're out there sailing around helping people. Like Telemachus is making toys for children. Circe is giving like potions and stuff to the mortals and pretending to just be a regular herb woman. And like it's supposed to be this cute little like, oh, they get to be normal moment, but it's not. It felt so flat. It was just kind of like, how are we here? How did we forget that this is your like kind of pseudo stepson? Like all of a sudden it doesn't
Yeah.
matter that he's your son's brother, that he's Penelope and Odysseus's son. You're just having a lot of fun with him on the beach. Okay.
Yeah, this part I was really, I don't remember when it like clicked in my head that they were supposed to be like romantic or that they were actually going to be romantic. I
Yeah.
kind of got the idea because of Telemachus being like, I only want to go with you. And I was like, what? But I was just like still hoping that it wouldn't actually happen because it was so weird. And it was somewhere during this part where I was just like, what? Like,
Yeah, it's very so Madeline has this habit of explaining her sex scenes in the most like I'm going to be very, very fancy about it. And like, because even in Song of Achilles, there's like one sex scene that's more explicit between Achilles and Patroclus, and it's just like, it's even then, it's using terms where it's like, okay, this isn't spicy sex. The way
mhm.
that she does it in this one is, like they only wanted to reach for what was at their fingertips, meeting each other,
Oh.
and yeah, that's how we were supposed to get it, and I'm kind of not surprised that it didn't hit you until probably because I outlined this part. It was they're talking with each other as they're helping out these mortals, and Circe says to him, "Your mother, do you think she'll be angry at us?" And he says, "No, she likely knew before we did." How did she know?
Ew. And
Yeah, that's weird.
number one, ew.
Yes.
If your mother can tell that you have like the hots for like a goddess that also had lots of sex with your dad before you, and she's like, I'm gonna sit back and let this happen. Like, what the fuck? This is like a really bad porno movie. Like,
It is. Oh my God.
and like when they said that, I was like, oh, they're like, I guess
Yeah.
they're getting together, but I like didn't think they actually had at that point at all because I don't care about that stuff. And like it's also just like the when I say like I don't care about that stuff, I mean that like when you're asexual, you don't have that same like obviously that's the definition of it. That you don't
Yeah.
have that same attraction, so you don't feel like that desire or need to like do that as a way to like express the feelings that you have for another person. And so
Hmm.
the best way for that is that line about like they like reach for each other. It would never occur to me that like reaching for the things nearest them would be like having lots of sex with each other because that's just like not what I would ever think. I would never think of doing that as a way to like feel comfort or to feel like connected or
Yeah.
whatever with another person. And so if you don't tell me that's what you're doing, I generally am not going to know what the fuck you're talking about because that's just not what I think about ever in that way. I don't think about it as a way of like expression like that. And so unless they actually tell me what they're doing, I'm just like I don't know what's going on right now. Something is stupid is happening. I couldn't read any of the scenes of them being romantic anyway because I'm like this is basically like some weird form of incest and
Yeah.
I can't like focus on it long enough because I just am so freaked out by the entire basis of this entire relationship and I like wanted Telemachus to be like away from her. Like I don't think that him being with somebody that's been with his dad is exactly a good idea.
It's weird. It's
Like he
weird.
should probably be with somebody who just like likes him for him that's never met Odysseus before.
It like, I'm pretty sure if I asked, like, oh, I didn't think to ask him this one before, but I'm pretty sure if I asked him if there was like some immortal goddess that also slept with your dad, would you? And he'd probably say no, you know? Um,
No.
and it's just like, it's such a weird concept, the idea of them both having shared a lover. And so, yeah, what she ends up doing with Telemachus is that they decide to go back to her homeland, and she goes and collects those yellow flowers that she used to change Glaucus and to change Scylla at one point. And so after that, they go back to Aea, meet up with Penelope. She's happy. There's a bunch of new lion cubs and stuff. Um, and um, we find out Penelope wasn't surprised for whatever reason. Like, it actually turned out to be true. Um,
Okay.
and one thing that Circe decides to call Penelope on in this part, part of me likes Penelope for this, but I don't love this ending just altogether, was that Circe was like, so how did you know that you would piss me off by kneeling to me when we were
Oh,
having
yeah, yeah,
fights
yeah.
about Athena? And she says it's because Odysseus said something about you once, that he's never met a god that hates their divinity more. And so, like, she knew that any showing me signs of devotion like a divinity would be a no. And that's also supposed to be one of our hints of like, oh, this is how we are supposed to know that Telemachus and Circe are a thing, is because she's a god who doesn't like being a god, and Telemachus is the son of a hero who wants to be nobody. So it's that's what we're supposed to get from this, but it
Mm-hmm.
doesn't hit that way. Like, it doesn't. Um,
This is a very weird family situation.
yeah. And so we
Like,
get
hi,
in this
my wife
conversation.
had my wife had sex with my dad. Oh my God.
Like, there's been romantic comedies of that stuff, of like, oh, I fell for my parents' boyfriend or something. Like, what was it? There's one with like Diane Keaton and somebody else, Jack Nichols or something.
Yeah,
Like, yeah.
I know who you
Um,
mean.
Yeah, I don't remember which movie it is because all of his romantic comedies kind of blend
Yeah.
together for me. But um, yeah, so we get Penelope and Circe in this moment having this conversation where it's like, yeah, I'm not really surprised. And also, we're switching places because this is where the conversation happens, where Penelope is just like, I guess I'm the new witch of Aea. I don't exactly look like you, though. And
Mm-hmm.
Circe is like, oh, you could dye your hair. It's fine. Um, and like this is how that chapter closes, of just like the whole Aea chapter, everything with Penelope, and it's like, okay, Penelope's out of the picture, Telegonus is out of the picture, this is why Telemachus is on the table now. This is why he's allowed, is because we've settled both of those things. Those two characters are out of the way that were in the way of this romance. And so the final chapter, and it's only like 5 pages altogether. But the final chapter is this imagination scene of Circe thinking about how she wants to live a mortal life now, and she wants to be a mortal and grow old with Telemachus. Like, she imagines him asking her for more children, and that's why she does it. And so she even like has this little fantasy go as far as, and Hermes is going to be the one to lead me into the underworld.
Mm-hmm.
And it's part of me almost doesn't want her to get that fantasy, because like all of this happens before she tells herself it's the intention she's putting behind a spell, and the spell being she's gonna drink those flowers that she didn't want to drink earlier.
Mm-hmm.
We had that scene at the beginning of the book after she changed Scylla where she's like, maybe I should drink these myself to see what happens. And this is her setting the intention. What's going to happen is I am going to become a mortal woman, and I'm going to get to like turn old and die.
Mm-hmm.
And I'm going to get to do it with Telemachus. And it doesn't feel earned. It feels so out of nowhere. And like, knowing that this was an option all along, why wouldn't she do this for her son? You know, like,
Yeah.
before starting a whole new romance, if I had a child and I wasn't going to die and my child would grow old and die, I would want to be on that journey with them. Like I
Mm-hmm.
would want to figure out a way to be a mortal person with them if I couldn't find a way to make them immortal.
Mm-hmm.
And so it's like, why is she doing this now? Why for this romance when like she's been pining after Daedalus still like this entire
Forever.
time? And like he obviously meant more to you, and that romance at least had more substance to it theoretically than this one did.
Mm-hmm.
Why now? Why now?
Yeah. That scene reminded me of the scene at the end of like Titanic when you see them like in like the afterlife, like getting
Yeah,
married on the ship, and you just kind of, and they never say it definitively, but it's like you think and are quite sure that that's like Rose dying
yeah,
basically, as like she finally did like the last thing that she needed to tell people, and now she can die. Or even like the end of Lord of the Rings where like Frodo goes off to like the island, and you know that Sam goes to like join him there eventually. Even though you
hmm,
don't see it, you know that's something that they're going to do, but they talk about it as more like a dream or something at the time.
hmm,
So it felt like it was something that we were supposed to think happened, and I was just like, this is just that. Whenever I said like in one of our episodes that like the ending of this book is so annoying, this is what I meant. Is that
hmm,
every time she would be like, "Oh my god, I'm so sad because Daedalus like left me, or this person left me, or that person left me," and I'm just gonna like reenact a My Chemical Romance music video by being all sad and like standing and looking at the rain and making everyone feel uncomfortable because my life is so sad
yeah,
because I have all of this power, and I like just sit there and cry all the time about it and don't do anything at all with it ever that is actually useful or helpful to anybody.
hmm,
Period. It's like this is just so stupid that the way that all these things are framed, they are framed as like, oh, Circe keeps losing all of these people to justify her wanting to be human at the end. That was like, once I remembered that halfway through this book, I'm like, this is so fucking annoying that this is why they're presenting things this way, is like you're supposed to be sad whenever she's sad that these people are like not in her life anymore, and so you're supposed to be happy at the end that she gets to like stay with one of those people. You're supposed to be happy that she gets to stay with any of them after a bunch of them leave, but I didn't feel like that at all. And
hmm,
so I was just like, this is dumb. Like it's just stupid that they like keep doing this story of where like she's so aggravating to be around, where she's like making herself always the person that is like losing something even when other people have lost much more. And
hmm.
she has to do that to justify her giving up her entire like divinity at the end, or like wanting to, or at least seemingly doing that so that she can like be a normal person. But I also just, beyond that, I think that it's silly as like that is like the only option that she could possibly have to be happy, is to like give up the entirety of like who you are, and that's the only way for you to ever be happy. Like this is going to seem like a really weird, not that weird because it's us, but it reminds me of, there's this trope in Percy Jackson fandom that I hate so much. Like there is a very popular account that does like skits and stuff where she's basically doing a fan fiction, but she just like acts it out in videos. I see it. I don't block it because people will send it to me every once in a while, even though I don't watch it at all, because her biggest skit was about Percy being turned into a god. And that's what this reminds me of like the idea that like the only way that Circe could be different from the other people in her family around her is if she like gives up completely, and like permanently changes like everything to do with herself, her body, like the fact that she
Hmm.
could die, and to physically turn into a different version as a way to show how she is different from the other people around her. In the same way that like people imagine Percy being a god, and they imagine him becoming a god as being different from every other god that exists because Percy is so different from every other god. But I'm like, but that is not what that would feel like if that actually happened. And Percy doesn't need to turn himself to like physically make him different or above other demigods in order to like be the one that is kind of like starting the path of them dealing with their, their trauma and like their intergenerational family stuff. Like, you don't have to do that in order to like make a difference. You actually make much more of a difference if you don't do that. You make, like, Percy makes way more of a difference instead just like continuing to be himself, because he is still there. Like, it shows that it's like very possible for you to do things like that. He's not like this super special, overly magicified, like uber powerful being that nobody else could ever do. He's just Percy. And so like if Percy could do that, if Percy could decide to like help everybody else instead and not just take like endless power from the gods, then everyone else can too. Or like people can think of ways to like help people, which is what all the books after that book is about, is all these other characters doing things like that because they saw him do it and they're like, oh, that's a good idea. If he could do that, I can do something like that too. And in this way, like, that never happens with Circe. And I don't know why, like, that's not the story. Because I'm like, shouldn't that be the story? That, like me being me. I'm like, are you kidding me that you have a character that is a god, that has endless, like, ability to be alive, that has endless powers. Like, she understands magic that nobody else understands. And her way of like realizing that like the rest of the gods are not good people. They hurt a lot of people. They make a lot of people their victims. They don't care about what anybody else goes through. And so her way of like happiness is literally abandoning all of the people that are going to be hurt by them when she could actually stop them in the way that she does in these chapters, leaving them to be victimized by them for all time. And instead, she personally gets to go out and live her life and die and ignore the fact that she is leaving all of those people behind to be harmed when she could stop it. She could stop it. Like, how could you possibly know that you have the power to help people like that and be like, but I don't want to. I'm going to put myself first for the millionth time in this book. And instead just like literally help myself and leave everyone else to rot. Like, that will never make any sense to me at all. Like, imagine you get to the end of The Last Olympian and Percy is like, actually, you know what? I don't want to be one of the gods, but could you make me a house on this cloud where I'd never have to interact with another human being for the rest of my life? And I'll just stay here and never see anybody. Annabeth and Grover can come visit me and nobody else can. And that is it. Like, it would be like, what? Like, that would be the opposite of what he would want to do and also what you would want him to do. Yeah. And so the idea that she like has the power to actually make huge like long-term difference, like actual like change, like actual cycle breaking in this general world, but she's just like, ew, the gods are gross.
Well, so my big problem as a fellow classicist with Madeline is that I do think these characters and what their archetype is supposed to represent matters. With Circe, what her archetype is this sorceress who can bring out people's true form, right? Like, it's the version that Rick goes with. It's the version that we get from the Odyssey of her, like, like it was supposed to be a funny little Miss Andress statement that she turns men into pigs and dogs because like she's bringing out their true form. Mm-hmm. And so why not have her do that in a positive way? Like that would be the way to show your family is like, I'm gonna bring out the best in people, not the worst, not monsters. I'm gonna help raise heroes. I'm gonna help like heal heroes that come to my island. I'm going to be a refuge for people from the gods. Those could be the ways that she touches the world in a better way, and shows that she's different from her family. It just feels like it's not gonna matter at this point now that it's just, and now she gets to be a wife. The end.
Yeah, it's just so, what? Like, she goes through all of this stuff, never seems to learn anything. And then, before she left Penelope, they had her, like, give Penelope advice about like basically how to not be raped. And I was like, you know what? Like I saw videos when we were even reading this book of people saying that like they didn't like this book because they felt like they made her like a rape victim just to have her turn people men into pigs, but they literally just had her be a rape victim so she would turn men into pigs. There is no other reason.
Yeah.
There is no other effect on her characterization at all. If you skipped that like chapter, or even if you just skipped the last page of that chapter and you just knew that those men like hurt her somehow, but you didn't actually read what they actually did to her, you would nothing in this book would change. If you skipped like the last chapter and the first page of the next chapter where she talks about being strangled, nothing in her character, you wouldn't miss anything. There nothing would be different. You wouldn't feel like you've missed a huge part of her story if you took those 2 pages out, because there is nothing happens from it.
Mm-hmm.
They literally, she had her be raped to justify her wanting to turn men into pigs. And then as soon as Odysseus showed up, she just like stopped thinking about any of that stuff and never brought it up ever again until she was warning like Penelope, or even when the pirates show up, she's afraid of them at first. But then like, you know, her son shows that they're okay and she just like isn't afraid of them anymore. It's just so weird that they just don't talk about it. And it's like you had her go through a super brutal rape, like a violent one, and then just had her move on from it, and you don't even talk about it again. Like you don't ever talk about what she thought about it. It's immediately just like forgotten.
Mm-hmm.
And then it gets all into like Odysseus and stuff. And so it's like, what was the point of all of that? Was it just to like make her be sad for a little while? I honestly don't understand like why that was not like, why did I have to read that? Like
Yeah, and
like why did I have to read that and like have like nightmares for a couple days after that, after reading that, when there was like no actual purpose for it?
yeah, it has very little payoff. I've said before with like Rick making Calypso be exiled. That to me is a modern author taking something that doesn't necessarily have an explanation in mythology. Like, why does Calypso have to stay on Ogygia? You know, well, Rick gave us an answer. Why does Circe turn men into pigs? Well, we had our answer all along. It was that she thought she was bringing out people's true form.
Mm-hmm.
It was a little misandrous dig. As I said, it's meant to be funny. It's meant to be levity. But we turned it into something super, super serious that didn't even have the correct payoff because, you know, as I said, at least in Epic, there was a little bit of compelling with I'm also protecting all of these nymphs that happen to be on my island as well.
Mm-hmm.
Because, yeah, now they can't hurt any of us. That makes so much more sense than even this. You know,
Even
like,
like Circe or Cece in Sea of Monsters, like someone who keeps all these women on her island to protect them and make them feel beautiful,
mhm,
and turns men into hamsters instead of pigs, but the same general idea of like, you guys make us feel really horrible and bad and ugly about ourselves, and so this is like one place where we have like the control and can hurt you instead of it being the other way around.
mhm,
Like that's a very under you can understand like why she feels like that. And it's just it's I honestly don't understand like the point of any of that stuff. Like people
yeah.
talked about the like sexual assault stuff so much about this book, and I was like really surprised because of how much people talk about it, that it basically happens. She talks about it for like a chapter, and then as soon as Odysseus shows up, it's like she mentions to her son that the reason why she liked Odysseus, and even Telemachus was like, oh well, I needed to get over something, and she doesn't say what it is. We know that it's that, but it's also just like there's like so much more that comes with things like that, and it's the same as like what we were just saying. Like Percy Jackson's a children's book, and Circe in that book is somebody who gives like a place where women can go and like feel safe. And
Mhm,
part of there's characters that are in Sea of like in the background that say that they were there when Sea of Monsters stuff happened, that hate Percy at first, because when they showed up, they kind of like destroyed their like safety on in like their place on that island, and they have to like rebuild because of all the chaos that him and Annabeth caused. And Percy understands why those people hate him, because
Yeah.
it's like, yeah, that was like your safety place and I came in and destroyed it. I would also be upset at me if I did that to me. And so like that's just framed so differently than this stuff, and it's just really weird because I'm like, this is for like adult people. And so like why aren't they like talking about any of these things? It just overall, that's just what I got stuck on, is this idea that like I feel like when you got to the end of this book, you were supposed to feel like Circe went through all of these horrible bad things. And so you're supposed to be okay with her having like the reward of being able to like be human as like a reward for all of these bad experiences that she went through. But when I was reading this book, yeah, she was raped horribly, and other things like being the scapegoat of her family wasn't great, and all this other stuff happened too. But really bad things happened to other people too, and she was really dismissive of those things happening to everyone but her.
Yeah.
And so it was hard for me to feel like I feel like she needed way more character development and way more of her like helping people and like actually like using, I don't know. This is just me, like how I am, but it would be like if I went through everything that I have and then I just like got an office job and never talked about anything that I ever experienced again for the rest of my life. Like, what a fucking waste. Because like I am alive, and there are a lot of, and this is not an exaggeration, I am alive. There are a lot of people that went through the exact same stuff that I am that are not alive.
Hmm.
Like there are a lot of people that do not survive even to like their 30s, or even like going back to therapy. I almost didn't survive that, but I did. Or even just surviving past like 18 or whatever.
Yeah.
There's a lot of people who don't. And it's like, I actually survived that. And so there has to be a reason. Like, there has to be a reason for why I did. I have to make a reason for why I survived, but all these other people did not. They're in the exact same situation as me. And so it would just feel like, what is the point of me surviving all of that and being able to like tell people things that you usually don't hear, because most of the people who go through it are dead. Like the actual, like what this stuff is actually like, and like how to survive it, and from not like a therapeutic sort of way, but just from like a real life sort of way. Like, what was it on Threads the other day? There was a mom that was posting being like, oh, my 15-year-old refuses to take a bath. And she was saying that she was like they were trying to convince her to take a bath for like 3 hours. And she wouldn't get in. All of the replies were people being like, take her to a therapist. She's been sexually assaulted. Because that is like the number one sign that there's been some sort of like sexual violence of some way, when you don't want to do that stuff, especially get naked.
Yeah.
And like, but all of the things were like, go to a therapist, go to a therapist, go to a therapist, take her to a doctor. And like my reply was like, let her take a shower without the lights on, and get her things. There are things where you can like wash yourself with like soap things, like I don't know what they are. They're like almost like washcloths, and you can use them to wash yourself without actually having to take a shower or take a bath.
Hmm.
And I'm like, that is like the applicable answer to that question that nobody usually thinks of. Because
Yeah.
I've actually had to do that. Like I hate taking showers. I like take the shortest showers on planet Earth with the lights off. I just do it as fast as humanly possible and get back out because I hate doing it. But there was times where I couldn't even take a shower, and I would like buy those products so that I didn't have to actually take a shower to like feel somewhat clean, because I just couldn't do it. And so it's just those things people just don't think about, or they don't know like the kind of like direct, like this is actually something I can go out and get or do, instead of it being like this bigger issue of like, go to a therapist. That's like not something like actionable that you can really do. But that is something actionable you can do because of just my life experience. And so I'm just thinking of like all these things that Circe has been through and she's experienced, and she has like firsthand knowledge about all these different things that have happened to all these different people, and that could help so many other people going through like time. not only just like her son, but other people that are dealing with like Athena or the other gods or her dad or just so many different things that could possibly come up, even just like those flower things. She could tell other people about those flower things and like teach them how to use them in like a safer way instead of it being like her just doing it when she didn't know what she was doing. There's just so many things she could do to help so many people and make like an actual difference, like real long-term actual change, and could give you the idea of like some hope that like the gods are horrible. You're not necessarily going to change them necessarily, but you can create change outside of the actual gods. And you can make them acknowledge that things could be different. Like she forced her dad to let her off the island by basically manipulating him. That shows that it's possible to get them to change their minds about things. And so it's like, it just felt like so wrong to me in general to introduce like the potential she has for somebody like that, and especially since her and other things, that's what she's like, is like somebody that people go to for help, who need it. And so for her instead in this version to be like, I'm not going to help anybody, I'm going to go run off with my son's brother and have a weird relationship with him. And like it was also really weird that she made such a big deal about her son, and then as soon as he leaves, she's like, I'm going to go #live my life and like go to Egypt and go on all these adventures. Apparently, I'm only afraid of Athena around my son until she's actually around my son. Now that she is around my son, I don't give a fuck anymore.
Yeah, the way that it's said in these chapters is she's not the worst one, so it's fine.
What?
Yeah, okay, after all of that, sure, girly. We don't even get as a part of this fantasy, oh, I'm going to be a medicine woman and I'm going to heal so many mortals. Like,
Mm-hmm.
no, she's just going to be a wife. And she's
Yeah.
going to have two daughters with Telemachus. That's what we get in this
And
fantasy.
like
Yeah.
this book more than any, like there are times when I'm like, wow, I'm really gender fluid, and this book I'm like, wow, I really am, because like all of this like quote unquote #womanhood stuff, I'm just like, ew, like I don't want any of this. Am I supposed to want this? Like I really don't want any of this, and I feel like this book wants me to want it, and it's just,
Yeah.
it's like, are you Madeline Miller, like like
Need I
authors.
remind you guys, it was like a big deal in the beginning of this book when she left behind a tapestry that showed people getting married. It was a
Hmm.
big deal. And now that is her ultimate fantasy we are finding out.
Yeah,
It
her
makes zero
ultimate
sense.
fantasy is to like get married to the same man and stay with him for the rest of her life and have children with him after she's already had children with his dad,
Yeah.
and then like die with him. And the only reason she wants to do that is because of him. Like he is somebody that will die one day, and so she now wants to just die one day because he will die one day. Like she never like makes, throughout this entire book, she doesn't ever really make a decision because she just wants it. Like
Hmm.
she wants to make Glaucus a god because he offhand makes like a joke about how great it would be to become one, and so she just makes him one. Like she just does these things because other people, to have like what she thinks she wants with other people. Like I don't like how people talk about codependency, but it is more like a codependent sort of thing. Like
Yeah.
she keeps her son like locked alone on this island forever and using like the threat of Athena as the reason. And then suddenly when he's gone and he's with Athena all the time, she doesn't care about that anymore, and instead now she's all about like Telemachus, and before that she was all about like Daedalus, and then she was all about Odysseus, and it's just all these different people, she's all wrapped up in them, and make these like big life decisions based on them. Like even
Hmm.
Hermes and stuff, she was like that for a while too. And it's just like I just want her to like make a decision because it's what she actually wants to do, not because she thinks it's the only way to keep this person in her life. And like obviously you can make decisions to want to be around somebody, because you love them, that isn't codependent that way, or whatever. Like, I hate living in Wisconsin, but I probably will always come back here because my niece lives here. And so, like, if my niece wasn't alive, I would be, like, much more willing to leave and, like, never come back. But she is alive. And so, as long as she lives here, I'm going to always, at least in some way, always want to be around here in some way because I want to see her on a regular basis. And she definitely is going to want to see me on a regular basis.
Yeah.
And so, that, like, keeps me always wanting to stay around here, even if I don't actually want to be here anymore. And like, I love my family that still live here, but I just don't like being here where all these bad things happened. And so it's just like that kind of an idea of like, I just, it's just so weird. That's the only thing I can feel about it. It just feels very weird to have her have the opportunity to do all these different things with her life. And so the idea that like she chooses to just stay with like one man and basically just be like a boring heterosexual trad wife. And I'm like, this is supposed to be like Circe, like a witch. All about like femininity and like the power of like femininity. And at the end of this book, she's like fantasizing about being married to a guy and just like staying with him and having kids. And it's like, because Madeline Miller has 2 kids, is that why she wants to have 2 kids?
I
But
don't know. Yeah.
but either way, it just feels like what's going on? Like, I didn't think that
Yeah.
out of every possible scenario of this book, I didn't think that it would end with her like I said in the beginning that you can, that maybe she'll want to get married or have kids one day, but it'll be like a different way than her family, so it won't be like what her family wanted, and that is like generally true, but I still don't feel like she actually like made this decision because she actually like wanted it. I feel like she was sad that Telegonus left and just like jumped into doing whatever with Telemachus instead so that she wouldn't have to be alone.
Yeah, he was
And
just there. Like, that's the only. I mean, okay, so she did the same thing that she did in Song of Achilles that I complained about, where it's like, you tell us once why this romance is a thing, but then you never show us again. And,
yeah.
like that thing that they say over and over again with writers is show, don't tell, show, don't tell. So yeah, she tells us, oh, they both aren't like their family. This is why they work together. And then we don't actually see it. We don't actually see them working as a couple. Everything before it actually became them being a couple felt like just she's just talking to this dude that happens to be there. Even her deciding to be mortal and deciding like I'm gonna go off and do this, like taking out Scylla and then figure out what I'm doing from there. Telemachus was just there. She
Mhm.
had no say in it. She just goes along with Telemachus just being there for the rest of her life. Like, what is that?
Yeah. Even with like the whole thing with Scylla, like she's the one doing the entire plan. He has no idea what's going on. And so you don't see like how they could like work together or like make themselves better. The whole thing out of any situation of like love of any kind is that the other person like makes you like a better person by like bringing out things or making you think about things differently or whatever. And if none of that stuff like happens, you just like have to believe that it does somehow, but because otherwise like why have this be like her ending, but you never get to see it. You're just kind of like told that it's there, but you don't get to actually see it in the same way that like Achilles and Patroclus, like by the end of the book, we wanted Patroclus to break up with Achilles because we're like, this is a toxic relationship.
Yeah, she did a lot more to show us why Briseis would be a better partner for him.
Yeah.
And so in both cases, because like the thing with Song of Achilles, people have been arguing, are they a couple since ancient times? That's how big of a like like an opening for it to exist that there is, but we don't have direct evidence, which is why it's been debatable. She
Which, by
could
the
have
way,
done
like,
anything.
this is funny, but on the demon person,
Mhm.
his comments already are like, you have to make them be gay together. And I'm like, oh my God, I'm not ready for this.
Well, yeah, we'll talk about him on Wednesday, but like,
Yeah.
yeah, there's a bunch of things I'm not looking forward to him potentially having to deal with doing Troy.
Mm-hmm.
But okay, so with that one, there was all the room in the world because, the theory has existed for so long, but because there isn't direct textual evidence. For this one, also, there's, like the suggestion they end up married in certain versions of the mythology. There is no standing myth where we see what their relationship is. So there was all the room in the world to turn Telemachus and Circe into something. She just
Hmm.
didn't. And in both cases, she is relying too much on the fact that it's an adaptation. I mean, we've talked about what makes good and bad adaptations. In this case, relying on people knowing the source material and it just being like, oh, it happens this way because that's what happens in source material, that's lazy. That's lazy
Yeah.
writing.
And it's also like, but why? Like that's
Hmm.
like the main thing that we argue about with adaptations of mythology that we like or don't like is that like just because it happens in the original story doesn't mean that you're like beholden to do that in yours. You can decide to adapt it differently or you can come up with a completely different reason for why
Hmm.
the same thing happens. And she does do that where like you can just tell that she's like, well, I have a PhD, and so this happens because I spent
She
all
only went
these.
masters from her bio in the book.
Okay, I
Yeah.
thought she's a PhD, but that was probably somebody else. But either way, it's like she got all this extra schooling, and so she's like, well, this is just what happens in classics, and so this is just like what I have to do, and it's just like this thing of like, yeah, that's just like what happens in that story, and so I have no choice but to do that because that's just like what happens. I'm like, but you're the writer. Like you can like decide or like you can give him an actual reason like beyond comparing him to her lion, which is a really weird comparison overall if you're going to be setting them up as like romantic. Like were we supposed to see the scenes of him fixing up her house as like them like flirting or something?
Yes, apparently. Apparently. I don't see it that way either.
I didn't at all because I was just like he just wants to feel
None of that
useful.
came off as flirty. None of it did.
No. And it felt like we were supposed to think that just
Yeah.
because the myth is that the two of them end up together. And so just them sharing scenes together, you're supposed to think that that's what that means. But most people don't know that.
Yeah,
Like
and there was no tension in those scenes. There was
you're
no
writing a
romantic
book
or
for like
sexual
the
tension.
you're writing a book for the masses.
Hmm.
Like the masses don't know all of these things. You can't just assume that they know these things. You have to like explain it. Like imagine if you're reading like The Lightning Thief and all of those scenes of Annabeth being like, our parents hate each other, and Percy being like, why, and her just being like, because like and never explain it, like why Poseidon and Athena don't get along or like how she's like we're gonna like break our family's generational curses by becoming friends and her at the end being like yes idiot I'm like you are my friend like what do you mean by asking me if we're friends or not. And it's like it would be like if they have all this animosity but never tell you why, and Percy just constantly thinking the entire book like why don't they like each other, why doesn't she like me, why does she hate my dad, and like no one ever explains to him why. It would just be really really weird. They explain to you because most people don't know things like that.
Yeah, and Rick even does a good job of having his characters explain it, even if his characters know it.
Yeah.
Um, like they'll usually be like, "Oh yeah, I remember that myth. It's this one,"
Mm-hmm.
something like that, right? But yeah, this a lot of what Madeline does feels like lazy writing, and it's like I want to like it so much more, and there are times where I like this story a lot more than Song of Achilles, but it's still not there for me. It's like, ugh,
Mm-hmm.
I
I
part of
feel
me
like
this is wait, so the education thing. Her not
mm-hmm.
getting a PhD, her only getting a master's. So master's is enough that you can teach like high school level and below usually.
Mm-hmm.
Because you'll do that and then you'll get your like education. So, like what I'm talking about where you go
Mm-hmm.
get like trained to be a teacher, or you get a PhD, you can become a professor. I feel like she went into writing novels because she's like, I want to use my education for something, but I don't want to be a teacher. Like, I can't help but feel like that's what she's doing here because that's what it feels like. It feels
Mm-hmm.
like, okay, I gotta put this knowledge somewhere and I'll expand the story my own little way here and there. But she doesn't have a great grasp on the original essence of the stories enough for me.
Mm-hmm.
In both cases, in both this and Song of Achilles. And it makes me really, really disappointed because it's like, I know you did coursework in this, girly.
Yeah. It's like I feel like she is in this like weird place, like just purely by happenstance of like when she put her books out.
Hmm.
That in 2011 there wasn't that many books that had like gay relationships
Hmm.
as like the main relationship that was like the center of the story. And so I feel like people look at Song of Achilles as this amazing, incredible romantic book because she was like one of the first like kind of mainstream books that like told that myth as if it was real instead of like downplaying the fact that they could have been like together or something like that.
Yeah.
And then with this book came out in 2018 and the Me Too movement happened in 2018. And people just talked differently about like sexual abuse and like grooming and all that kind of stuff back then. Like it, you had to like really explain to people like why those things are as damaging as they are in a way that you don't have to now. Like
Hmm.
when people always have problems like believing people, but also when people come forward and talk about like this person did this and this and this to me, people like don't ask them usually for like more information necessarily. They're just are like, oh my god, they understand how harmful that is, or like they understand the idea that when you had that happen, that you don't tell people for a while, or you lie and say that it never happened to you because you don't want to deal with it, or just like the weird responses that you have to that sort of thing. People understand more like why people act that way in the way that they didn't back then. And so I feel like this book probably felt at the time like this amazing kind of like feminist thing because it did talk about Greek mythology from the eyes of like the women that
Hmm.
are like living it. Like Rick even recently on his Goodreads, somebody asked him for books that center like stories about women. And one of the books that he mentioned was this one. And it's like I understand why he would because it probably felt like a huge deal in 2018 when this book came out and the main character was Circe and most of the main characters were other women throughout like mythology that usually get like bastardized and demonized really badly, like Medea and Pasiphae and things like that, and even the poor little Minotaur
Yeah.
and things like that. Like the things that are usually seen as like monstrous are more humanized. And so at the time in 2018, that was like the second year of like the first Trump presidency. Me Too was like a necessary thing for people to realize like how prevalent sexual abuse was, how harmful it actually was, because people just generally didn't know like Jessie Smiles.
Yeah.
We like watching her. So in her big video she did in 2021 about Gabby Hanna just being absolutely horrendous. Like that whole situation is actually a good example of what I was just talking about. That when that was happening and Gabby Hanna was like talking about things the way that she was, people were so angry at her because people understood then like how damaging her bringing all that stuff up over and over again and talking about it the way that she was, how harmful that would be to like somebody like Jessie who had to like relive those things every time she brought it up
Yeah.
in a way that like people just wouldn't have understood the same way a couple years prior. But like Jessie,
Yeah.
even in her big video, she like brought up the Me Too movement. She's like, when that happened, everything changed. And suddenly, like her exact words were, suddenly people had some fucking compassion for you. And
Yeah,
instead
well,
of,
because the Curtis thing happened pre that. And
yeah,
so like she had to deal with people not necessarily in Hollywood because like she was living in LA, but it was like the early influencer scene with
yeah,
Vine. They all would still, like make videos with Curtis. They would still all like invite him to parties and shit. So she had to deal with the actual like pre Me Too with that. But
mm-hmm.
then she was able to talk about the assault in a much different way after Me Too happened
Yeah, because
and
people like,
actually get like community around it.
yeah, and like part of the thing that Me Too did was like talk about change how people talked about consent
Hmm.
and how people understood that it's a lot more complicated than what it seems like I remember when I was younger, even way before like Me Too, but especially around that time, like arguing with people about how like your boyfriend can rape you, your husband can rape you, men can be raped. Those things were like things that people would generally not agree with you on
Yeah.
if you brought them up a lot of the time, and you would have to like explain like that consent is not as like easy as it seems. And her situation, even with how it even happened, was a situation like that. Like they had dated before. She was over at his house because he offered to help take care of her when she had like a concussion or something like that. And
Hmm.
so it's like they had like dated before. She was over there on her own, and so when people heard that story at first before actually understanding consent or caring to understand it, or like really thinking about what she was saying, they just thought like, oh, he must have gotten like confused about what she actually wanted or something like that, instead of it
Yeah.
being what it actually was, that he waited until she was asleep and couldn't stop him because she had a concussion and was like messed up, and then started doing things, and then afterwards used the fact that they dated as a be like, oh, I thought that she wanted, I thought that she came over here
Yeah.
tonight to do this, and because why else would she come over to my place if not to like do this sort of thing.
It was
And
that
it,
he woke her up and
yeah,
like
she
there
like
was
woke up to like it happening
yeah.
basically. And
No,
like
but like
that,
in the morning. And wait, this is where like the consent conversation gets like people can't see like the forest for the trees because
mhm,
like apparently she had told him when we were dating like, "Oh, I wouldn't mind, like waking up in the morning to somebody doing this," as like when they're dating. And then because it happened when they were broken up and she legitimately had an injury and like probably shouldn't have been sleeping at his place anyway. Let's be real. You
yeah.
have a concussion, you're not supposed to go to sleep. Like yeah. And cuz that's one of the things that like got really gross with Gabby afterwards was like, "Oh, well when they were a couple, they had talked about her wanting this, like in a relationship." And it's like, "Okay, but they weren't in a relationship." And
And even
that any
so, that's
conversation they had had about that is like null and void when you break up.
and even so, even if you're in a relationship, that's a very dangerous line to walk, to like do that when they're not really awake, to like be
Yeah.
initiating things when someone isn't really awake, because if they're not awake, they can't like really tell you if they really want to do it or not. And
Yeah.
so that's like something I feel like people say as like a joke or something, but I'm not sure anyone would actually want to actually do that like in practice, because it would just be so easy to accidentally hurt the other person, even if you didn't actually, even if you really didn't mean to. It would
Yeah.
be very easy to get confused and to actually hurt them, and then make everything way more complicated than you even would ever want it to be. But
Yeah.
it's just that kind of stuff with consent was so like the
Yeah.
complexities of consent was something that people were very did not understand at the time. And so I feel like a book like this would have made a lot of people feel like seen or understood or whatever,
Yeah.
in a way that still wasn't around very much during that time. Like I remember that, Jesus, like I remember that time, it was horrible when it
Hmm.
came to that stuff. Like it was nice to see people starting to like understand, but it still like wasn't, they still were like needing to understand these things. You had to like,
I mean,
I
we
don't know.
still have to shake it into people about men because their
Yeah.
physiological responses are obvious and people
Well,
are
and
like, yeah.
especially like the whole thing with men of that, that's always that like the way that we became friends, like me saying like, if you say that this doesn't exist about your this other person, you're saying that that also couldn't have happened to you when that did happen to you, so why are you doing that to yourself? It's the
Hmm.
same kind of thing of like, if you say that like men cannot be because their body has a reaction, that happens with women's bodies too. Your body
Yeah.
sometimes has a reaction, not because you actually want it, but because it's literally just a like a scientific like physiological body sensation, not because you actually want it. And it is one of those things that makes you think maybe I did want it, because why else is my body doing this? But like that happens with women as well. And
Hmm.
so if you say that like it couldn't happen to men because that happened and so they wanted it, obviously, you're also being mean to yourself at the same time.
Hmm.
And so it's like, why do that? Why are you being mean to yourself? And it's like,
Yeah.
it's the everything with like consent with these things, you're whenever you try to say that's not true for another person, it automatically always comes back onto you somehow too.
Yeah.
Like whenever men talk about how like, oh, women are lying or whatever about like when they take away consent, that could also apply to things that happen to you guys too,
Mhm.
and situations that you don't want to be in either. With like older women is like the stereotype, but still like that, like the whole situation with like Zoe, Laverne, and Connor, like he
Yeah.
couldn't have, like he doesn't think, he thinks that he said yes, and so it wasn't rape, and it's like it is rape anyway because you were 13. it
Yes.
doesn't it doesn't matter that you think that you said yes and that you wanted it because you were 13, and she knew at 19 that there was no way that you could possibly even like conceive of the idea of like doing that. Like when you're 13, you don't really fully even understand what sex even is,
Mhm.
like in a way where you could like agree to say yes to doing it and actually consent to doing it because you actually understand what you're even saying yes to. Like you couldn't. You can't. Like when I was like 12, 13 was when I realized that's what has been happening to me all this time. Like I people would mention sex, but like learning about it at school or whatever and then having it happen in your actual life, it's totally different things. You don't
Yeah.
understand how they're connected. You just like you're too young. You're way too young to like put that together, that this thing that is happening is that thing that they taught me in like sex ed class after school one day when everybody was really uncomfortable. You just like don't put those things, it takes a really long time to put those things together because you have to be old enough. And usually it is around 7th grade when when it's happening to you as a kid. Is usually in like 7th grade when you're 12, 13, where you start to like connect those things together and realize what's going on. I think we're just too young before that to like cognitively be able to understand it, and so like somebody like him could never have consented, and like one day he'll figure that out. Like he's
Mhm.
still young. He's only 8. He's a baby. He's only 18. He just graduated high school, for God's sake. Like he will one day realize later on like what that actually means. But it's just I understand why people liked this book so much, and I understand in a weird way like probably reading a character being like raped like on screen on like on
On
the page, I guess
page.
is the way they
Yeah.
would put it, is probably something that was like really shocking to people because I don't think that I am guessing that doesn't happen very much. I honestly don't know because most
I mean,
books
it
that have
does
things like that
happen.
I
It's
don't
just
read.
like we didn't care about it as a subject matter in the same way like um pre that, because I think like I told you a joke that I've been making is my mother-in-law recommended a book to me where it happens. That's old. It's like 80s
Mm-hmm.
was when it was big. So like it's been happening in books. Um but yeah, like I can see, she is a character in mythology speaking to that, and that is comforting in and of itself in a way.
Mm-hmm.
It's just, I think maybe we're spoiled as Rick Riordan fans in that, like, oh, here's a narrative of somebody who hates the other gods because she is not like them, because she has more empathy, and she's never able to name that it's I have more empathy,
Mm-hmm.
and she never actually does anything to try to make things better for anybody else. And
Yeah.
those two things, as people that are neurodivergent and want the sense of justice to prevail, it doesn't hit. And like, even the sense of justice we could feel towards her turning men into pigs after she gets raped is cheapened by the fact that it's just she's paranoid about all men. She doesn't give
Mm-hmm.
any single sailor a chance, like, to, if they're just genuinely, because they sailed through Scylla's waters, let's say, are in danger. She doesn't give them a chance to show that they're decent.
Mm-hmm. I think the thing with like me, especially when I read this, is I always think of things that why I like Percy Jackson so much is that it's a very smart way for Rick and Becky to teach kids like what abuse really is. Like all the other, every single like main character kid in the Percy Jackson books is a different form of like how abuse works in just different ways.
Hmm.
And so just by reading the books and like caring about these kids because they're characters you like in the books, you like they're just teaching them about things without seeming like they are. And so
Yeah.
it's like the perfect way for them to learn, because any kid who reads this book and reads like Luke and Annabeth being how they are, that's how they like picture what grooming is. And so there's a bunch of teenagers just like running around the internet telling people that like Annabeth has been groomed. There's like literal children in my comment section sometimes telling people like you don't have to be in a romantic relationship to be groomed. And I'm
Yeah.
like, oh my God, this is like
Like it's
my
working.
dream come
Yes.
to life, that I don't even have to explain this to people, because it's people that like have seen us talk about it before and also have like read these books. And so they understand, because these books help them teach them that without them knowing. And so when I look at a book like this with like Circe in it and like what happens to her, I'm like, this would be the perfect way to teach people without seeming like you are, like what happens after you go through something like that, and like how you actually recover from it, and like the steps that you take in order to recover, and like how hard that can be, but also how great it is when you start to like learn how to live your life again. And it would just be a very easy, accessible way for her to like show that process of her being so scared that she turns all of every man she meets into pigs, and then realizes that like some of them are innocent, but she never actually realizes that. But if like, let's imagine she did, if she realized when Odysseus's men, she was about to turn them into pigs, and she realizes like, I'm turning men into pigs that aren't like dangerous, I'm just assuming everybody is, that helps you not be so afraid of the world anymore, is when you realize that not everybody is like the person that hurt you, and that some people are okay. And then you could have her realize like the signs and stuff to look out for between like the people that will hurt you and the people that are fine, because there are things that you can tell the difference between
Yeah.
how people talk to you and just how they look at you, how they act around you. You can tell. Like I don't, I'm not like a savant or something. How a lot of the time when there's a news story that comes out about somebody doing something, and I'm like, I fucking knew it. I'm not trying to be that annoying person that is, you know, those people that are always like, I always knew there was something off about the. No, you didn't.
Yeah.
No, you didn't. But like a lot of the time, there is something that is like off about those people to me, and it's not because I'm being that annoying person. It's because they've done something that like I've recognized in people through the years, that like remind, basically it's like, oh, you remind me somehow of my dad. And so that means that there's something about you. And I don't know how it's going to come out, but I'm just going to like assume that one day maybe it will happen. And that's just like, I just kind of sit back and like wait for it to happen, and just like knowing that it probably will, because those things usually, I usually notice those things for a reason.
Yeah.
And sometimes it doesn't, but most of the time it does. And it's not like me being like annoying, like just hating everyone or being afraid of everybody. It's because I just see like traits, and that's why I'm not afraid of as much as something really bad coming out about like the rioters or something like that. And obviously there always is the potential for that. It is for anybody. You never know when like fully with people, and you never know about abuse, because people can cover it up so well. Like nobody had any idea what was going on with like Larry Nassar and the USA gymnastics team. People liked him. I liked him
Yeah.
before that came out. Like people, the fans generally liked him because we thought he was one of the good ones. And because he was really good at, the gymnasts weren't able to actually talk about things until it got to like that level, but they like couldn't talk about it, and so we didn't realize all these things that we were missing. And so sometimes you do get it wrong, but it's just one of those things of it actually like teaches you how to like figure out how to keep yourself safe without feeling like I need to get a gun.
Hmm.
Like instead of her being like, I need to like turn people into pigs, which is like her version of like having a weapon, or even her running around with like Tygon's tail for like a third of this book as like this really scary weapon. Instead of like going for a weapon, you instead learn how to notice things and then figure out ways to like get yourself out of situations when you feel like it's not a good place for you to be.
Yeah.
And that kind of stuff is actually helpful to people in life. And when I read a book like this, I'm just like, that is like, it would have been so easy to do that. And I'm frustrated that you didn't, because everybody knows about Madeline Miller. She has like such a big like pull or whatever. Like people, she's like one of the Greek mythology retelling authors that people generally seem to like. And
Mm-hmm.
so lots of people will go read her book as whenever her Persephone book comes out, which I'm now like mildly terrified about. Whenever that book comes out, we have to read it, obviously. What the fuck?
Yeah.
But like people are going to read it as soon as it comes out. She doesn't have to like do any like actual marketing for it. Her marketing is just being like, it's coming out on this day, goodbye. Because
Yeah,
she's just
she's
one
at
of
that
those,
point.
yeah, she's like one of those names that people just know. And so the idea
Yeah.
of somebody who has that sort of like influence, this is always just how I think that if you have that sort of influence, you actually have that influence. Like, why not use it for a good reason? And when you said like we're spoiled by like Rick Riordan, it's like, yeah, they're the good example of how they use that influence for always the best reason. They're literally like they have like moments of like anxiety because they're like they don't know what to concentrate on first. Like
Yeah.
when Becky was on Threads more before the whole big blow up happened, she used to post about how like I know I'm supposed to be uplifting right now, but I just like can't do it.
Yeah.
And I would tell her like you have to like nobody can do that all the time right now. You have to let yourself be sad because like it's overwhelming to like be somebody that like actually cares about people right now. But like she would say like I know I'm supposed to be somebody that's supposed to give people hope, but I just like she just like couldn't do it because watching all this stuff happen is like too hard.
Yeah.
And it's like yeah, there are people that actually know that people listen to them and they want to have like a positive impact on people's lives. And so whenever I see an author like Madeline Miller or what's her name, the author
Suzanne
that does the Hunger
Collins.
Games, yeah, Suzanne Collins, like are just completely silent on social media, and the only thing they ever post is when they have a book coming out. I'm just like that is just so weird to me that you built a career off of talking about like kind of feminist, ideas, but then you just like don't do anything with that sort of influence that is
Yeah, why didn't
positive.
we hear from you when abortion was up for grabs?
Yeah.
Well, so what gets me, going back to my statement that like I don't think she understands the essence of these characters from even
Mm-hmm.
just a classicist standpoint,
Mm-hmm.
is that the original stories can have meaning and can be shaped around who those characters' archetypes are. Like Achilles and the Iliad at its core is a story about Achilles being angry for not being recognized for his effort. He was like the one soldier there at Troy that meant something, that had no obligation to be there other than this is where you're going to get your Kleos kid. And that's why he was able to stay out of the battle and be angry and, like have his little protest against Agamemnon. But instead, she made him this like fighting savant who it seems to come from potentially being on the spectrum that he doesn't want to fight.
Yeah.
And with Circe again, like her essence is man hater who thinks she brings, like people's true form out. You could do something with that. That is an interesting and compelling story, with that setup alone. But that is such a small portion of this story, and
Mm-hmm.
it has no consequences, and it leads to nothing greater. Um,
And
like,
one thing I was gonna
yeah.
say, when you were talking, this reminded me of that with her dad. Is that like one thing that happens when you have abusive dad like that, and then you get to the point where you realize that you have a lot of power and you're not, and you something happens where you're not as afraid of them anymore,
Hmm.
in the way that she kind of did in that scene, but it didn't really come off the same way. Is that the dynamic totally changes when you're like that, or
Yeah.
like when you start doing things like that. They are like afraid of you,
Hmm.
because they know that you can like ruin their entire life. And like yeah,
Yeah.
she was talking about that, but it just they react to you in a very different way, and it just didn't come across that way. Like I don't
Yeah.
know why I never thought of this. A couple like when was this, like a month or something ago? I don't know why. I don't even remember what made me like realize this, but I was just thinking one of the things with my life is that my parents got divorced when I was like 12,
Hmm.
but between like 12 and 18 my dad like kept moving in with us every couple years. And my mom like like she could have told him no, but now I realize now as an adult, like he was actually a very scary person to tell no to. He didn't really
Hmm.
acknowledge no. Like she was like joking about him with me the other day that like you could say he would say no to you, but he would never take no as an answer when you said it to him. And so, like, I don't even know if she tried to say no to him, if he would have
She
actually
probably
acknowledged
did,
it.
yeah.
And she probably did, but he was just gonna move. Anyway, the thing I realized like a month ago, I just like sat there and was like, he totally moved in with us to try to like keep tabs on me so I wouldn't tell anybody. Because the times when, at least when I was like in high school and stuff, he moved back in with us when I was like starting to get friends and stuff like that. And like I wouldn't think about it then because it was just like things that I was doing and I wasn't like aware, even as myself. I can know that about other people, but it wasn't until like a month or so ago that I was like, yeah, he totally moved back in with me and like with us when I was like 16 because that was when I had this like big group of friends and I was like going to their house every weekend and like actually had real friends for the first time and he was probably scared shitless that I was going to go tell one of them. I never did, but he definitely, and maybe I would have if he didn't move back in with us and like kind of like start the process all over again, but with like being afraid of everything all over again and everything. But it was one of those things of like, oh, that is definitely why he did something like that. But when I was older, like I would just tell him things and he would listen to me when he wouldn't listen to anyone else. Like there were multiple times even when he had dementia and he like could not barely even talk and he would be doing something to my mom and I would like call him and I would tell him like if you do that to my mother ever again, I will never speak to you for the rest of your life. And he would be like, I'm sorry. And he would be like, I'm sorry, I'm sorry, I'm sorry, I'm sorry, I'll never do it again. And he never did it again. Every time I did that, he would immediately just be like, okay, I'm sorry, I'm sorry. I can't even remember what my name is right now, but I'll never do that thing again to your mom because I know that like, I will kill you. And I was saying this to somebody the other day, like, oh yeah, I was saying that to you, that like, that's probably why he like stopped with like me because he had to have known that I would have actually ripped his body apart if he tried to do something to my sister. Like I would have like actually destroyed him from the inside out. Like my mom would have come
Yeah.
home one day and found his organs around our house and would have just been like, "What's happening?" Because it just never would have like put up with that. And so it's just that's the kind of dynamic that changes is that they know that you have something on them and you can control them back. And so like that scene was supposed to be her doing that, but it wasn't really her doing that.
Yeah, it doesn't. It
And so
feels
it
like
just
it was
like
supposed to be a zinger in the same way, Pretty Woman, the scene, like, big mistake, huge. Like,
yeah.
it was supposed to be a zinger like that when she tells him, like, I can blow up your whole spot, Daddy. But it doesn't work. It doesn't work. And I wanted to feel that moment for her. I wanted it
Mhm.
to be like, fuck you, Helios. Yeah, take it. But no, no. It was so unsatisfying when she finally told him off.
Yeah. And it's just like those things just though they only have to change a little bit, but changing them a little bit would make it much more impactful. Cuz I guess if you're going to the story doesn't necessarily have to be that, but at least when we were reading it, it came off as like she's supposed to be like a cycle breaker. And I'm like,
Yeah.
maybe in 2018, people didn't know that many people who actually did that. And so this story was fine. But if you've
Yeah.
actually done that, you would read this book and be like, that's,
She's a cycle breaker in the same way that my mom is a cycle breaker. Like, I'll give her the
yeah.
acknowledgement of, like, yeah, you parented better than you were parented, and yeah, we didn't live in the ghetto growing up, because, like, the area that I actually saw a joke about the area my mom grew up in recently on social media, and it's like it was actually a really, really rough area back then when I would have grown up there, but now
Mm-hmm.
it's not. And so it's kind of like a joke to be like, I'm from Seven Trees in San Jose. It's not as hard as it used to be, and it
Mm-hmm.
doesn't have the credit it used to. But anyways, my mom moved us out of that area. That's where I would have grown up had my mom not tried to do better with us. And
Mm-hmm.
my mom heavily emphasized education. That's something that none of my aunts and uncles were doing. And, I want to say that the highest that anybody besides me has degree wise, from my maternal side at least, is like they got college level job training, like being a medical tech or something like that.
Mm-hmm.
So, like, yeah, I can see where my mom did better. But at the same time, she still spanked us. She still yelled at us. I still definitely was growing up way faster than I should have been. My brother was growing up way faster than he should have been. So,
Mm-hmm.
like, the real cycle breaking doesn't feel like it actually happened until we get now to William's generation, where this kid is still playing with sticks and picking his nose because he hasn't been bullied at home, you know?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, so like it doesn't feel like a cycle breaker in that sense. Telegonus is going to be the legacy where that actually happens, most likely, if this family continues on the way that it does.
Mm-hmm.
Although she gives us this kind of weird hint in the last chapter that he's probably not going to have kids himself anyway, which, like, why are we doing that now? That actually is kind of random.
That is
Um,
weird.
but yeah, so she's a cycle breaker in that she's like an early cycle breaker, but she's a cycle breaker that isn't doing it necessarily the most intentionally or the
Mm-hmm.
most thoughtfully.
This is why I think it's always funny to me when people ask our opinions about things like this, and I'm like, do you actually understand what you're asking us right now?
Yeah,
Like when I was reading this book, I'm like, am I ruining this book for her? Should she have read this without me like bringing all this stuff up? But
I
I don't think you would have liked it without me either. But I just like blame myself first always.
yeah, no,
But
it's those last three chapters. Like it really feels like, okay, this is what we did all of this for. And yeah, so honestly, what this really made me want to do is like, okay, well, let's look at some of these characters that no one else is looking at. Let's look at Medea a little bit closer.
mhm.
Like, let's look at Pasiphae a little bit closer, because even her, she's like someone I wouldn't think to look at, too much in mythology. It's like, oh yeah, Mother of the Minotaur, whatever. But what leads you to that point, right? We don't really
Yeah.
talk about that. Um,
At least not in a
so
way that makes him human.
yeah, not in a way that makes them human. It's like, oh, poor girl got put under a spell because Minos didn't offer his sacrifice to Poseidon. But like, what would that be for her, you know?
Yeah.
And the only humanization we do get of her in these, unfortunately, is like, oh, she was super proud of having the Minotaur be her child, because at least that was a claim to fame. But then the Minotaur dies, and she has to go back to her abusive family, and we're just supposed to accept that for her.
Mhm.
And same thing with Medea. Like we get that, she fully understands why her niece does not like her brother that she raised, by the way. And she's fully understanding of her niece, but then her niece ends up back with her brother, and all she thinks is, oh well, they were like each other anyways. Um,
Or even
it's so
like what we were saying
unsatisfying.
before about Scylla. Like
Mhm.
Scylla's just a normal girl.
Yeah, and the only consolation she gets is now she's turned to stone.
I
After getting a taste for human flesh, apparently, because she said how she must have grown accustomed to eating mortals.
I also don't understand why her and Penelope weren't girlfriends. Like that has to be like the popular thing because it actually makes a lot more sense. Like why didn't that happen again? Is it just because
Yes, let's give them the like. So Legend of Korra. It's kind of an interesting thing. Like I'm sure you've seen that
Mhm.
Korra ends up in
Mhm.
a lesbian relationship,
That made me
and
want to watch it one day.
yeah. So the way that you get introduced to the character she ends up with is that she dates
Mhm.
Korra's first love interest.
Mhm.
And so it's kind of like both of them are like, screw this dude, we got each other now. And yeah, that is a great angle. And it would be a great angle for ex-lovers of Odysseus to be like, wasn't he such a jackass? Like he always overthought everything. My God.
It
And
just
that
like
be how they
it like
fall in love.
naturally like made sense to me when I was reading these chapters that they would like end up doing something together even if they don't want them to be lesbians which like let them be lesbians anyway, but
Yeah, platonic
or
witchy
or
like
at least be like
snakes.
sapphic, I suppose. They can be bi or pan or whatever the fuck they want. But it's just a thing of like it like with their characters, it made more sense to me to imagine that happening than any of the other options that they gave. And it would have been more about like, you know, what they were kind of trying to write the book about like feminist sort of things and like understanding how the world works. And the two of them are people that have been hurt a lot by the world and would like understand each other in a way that other people wouldn't. And then sharing like the whole magic thing, it just like makes sense even to me that I was like, yeah, this has to be the thing that people wanted to actually happen.
Yeah.
And I'm not sure like why it didn't, beyond the fact that maybe it was like too much
I think
for
Madeline just
2018.
doesn't have a lot of imagination on her own. She, like I said, she does lazy writing in that she lets the mythology do the heavy lifting for why people date each other.
Yeah.
And we could do so much more with that. I mean, like she has a thing for smart people this whole book. And what we get from Telemachus is like she may make little suggestions here and there that Telemachus is a different type of intelligent than Odysseus, but we get more suggestions that Penelope is
Mm-hmm.
super intelligent. And it's like, oh, what if this was leading to Penelope being her ultimate type? That could have been a
Yeah.
thing. That could have been a choice.
Yeah, like Penelope is really good at reading people, like kind of the thing that I was saying before of like learning signs in people to figure out if they're okay or not by like her like pretending like she's not listening to people. She
Yeah.
hears a lot of what people say. I do that all the time. Like when I was my entire time in school, especially like middle school and high school, I would like have a book or just be like disassociating and like people would be like talking around me and I was like the quiet person that everyone would just talk around me thinking that I wasn't listening to what they were saying and I was listening to everything that they were
Yeah.
saying and I would just listen to what they would say and maybe tell like one of my friends afterwards if it was something, but most of the time I wouldn't say anything about what I heard them say and I would just like know that whatever they were saying about that person and just like keep it to myself to like understand that person better. That seems like what Penelope does just in general, why she seems like she's always like ahead of what other people are thinking because she just notices these things about people. That would actually be helpful for Circe because she's not good at that.
Hmm.
Um, and it's just weird that I don't know, it just feels like it didn't come up because it's not like in the original stories or something. And that's not a good
Yeah.
enough reason not to do it when you're at like doing an adaptation. If you can change things with like Scylla and all these other characters in this way, then even like the Minotaur and things like that, then why not do it with these characters in a way that like instead of like forcing the audience to read her like dating her stepson, why not just have her doing like something with Penelope instead?
Yeah, why couldn't they just run the island for a bit? Why couldn't she have a
Mm-hmm.
little family unit on the island
Yeah,
between Penelope and Telemachus even?
yeah.
Um, yeah, so ultimately, I feel let down by Madeline once more. And this, like, I feel like we just inch closer and closer to we gotta do this shit ourselves. So for our discussion with Jean, just to talk about this, like, as an overall story and how
Mm-hmm.
it works and doesn't work.
Mm-hmm.
So we do have that coming up. And then for the Wednesday episode this week, really quick, we are going to talk about Epic the Musical again. We're going to talk about the allegations that came out about Jorge's relationship in the past, that from our timeline, he was dating her when he wrote Epic the Musical, and it shows.
Yeah.
Um, and then also, we're going to talk about the video game that was going to be and got shut down.
Yeah.
And mostly because, at least what I saw in your comment sections, is that it didn't seem like people knew about that.
No,
Before we start another book, I was thinking, what else did we have on the schedule?
I think
It was the Titanomachy stuff.
yeah.
Like
The
me,
next thing was yeah, you talking about like the Titans, like the actual Titans War. And then after that was to talk about the different like in Percy Jackson, every book is like about like one of the heroes.
yeah.
to talk about all the different references because I have very much realized, being on the internet, that most people don't pick up those references and realize what he's actually trying to say. And
Yeah.
there's a ton of references that I just remember without actually reading The Last Olympian to Achilles in The Last Olympian. And most of the hero things in the other books are like they're like showing ways that Percy is not like them and that like Luke is usually like them.
Yeah, we've got a fun few episodes planned ahead of us before we fully dive into The Last Olympian, and we're also going to do our best to make sure all of the timing lines up. We'll make it line up with when the show comes out.
Yep.
Yeah, but we're not done with Circe quite yet because we are going to bring back on Jean, who recommended this to us. We do know that we're going to share some opinions. And I have faith that she'll be okay with the fact that we didn't love it, considering she did not finish Song of Achilles. Like,
Yeah.
I think she knows Madeline's got some bullshit in her.
Yeah. And she's not one that to be like that anyway. That's why it's fun to
Yeah.
talk to her about things because we're just like talking things out. And like I always got the idea when she read that book that she was like glad to like see a book that just like told the story of somebody realizing how much the patriarchy sucks.
Hmm.
And it's like, yeah, that's a good feeling to have. If that's all you remember from this book, you would have a very positive feeling about it. And
Yeah.
like we said before, it came out like at a time in history where I can understand why it meant a lot to people when it came out in the time that it did.
Yeah.
It kind of came out right when Me Too was happening, so it was kind of like I feel like it like kind of personified that for a lot of people, which is very understandable. But we
Yeah.
don't think about it the same way now.
Yeah. Yeah, but hopefully that means there is better representation on the horizon, even if we have to end up doing it ourselves.
Yeah.
All right. Well, I'm gonna let us end there so we get off before your phone dies again. But yeah, we'll be back for our Wednesday episode talking about Epic and Jorge once again. I mean, I hope for the final time, but it is going to be the ultimate time, that is for
Yeah.
sure.
It's just like this is it.
Yeah.
Do what you want to do after this, but this is all we can do now.
Exactly. So we'll be back on Wednesday, same time, same place.
Yep.
All right.